Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if ANBU Naruto x Hermione Harry Potter. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by SaturnXK, link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. What's the mission? A teen in a fox mask asked, his voice quiet. The fifth Hokage looked at him sharply. The guarding mission, Tsunade said. Can't tell you any more, just wait for the others to arrive. Hi. 7 poofs were heard, and when the cloud of smoke cleared, ANBU ninjas stood erect and in a line, silent. A second later, there was a swirl of sand, and the Kazuki appeared. Fox, slug, raccoon, cat, dragon, hawk, stag, wolf, dove, you are all here because I have a mission request, and I believe you are the best candidates, Tsunade said. She turned to Raccoon. Are you alright with leaving Suna with Kankuro as acting Kazuki? Yes, Raccoon replied softly. Tsunade nodded. Alright, the mission briefing, she said. In the wizarding dimension, a wizard by the name of Dumbledore Albus has sent me a mission request to send about 6 to 10 high-level ninja to guard his school. A dangerous wizard by the name of Lord Voldemort has risen to power once again and is threatening the wizarding dimension. Your job is to guard the school, as well as protect a boy named Harry Potter who is prophesied to bring down Voldemort and restore peace. You must keep the boy safe because if he dies, Voldemort will rule the wizarding world and it won't be long before he hears of other dimensions. He may even come to the ninja continent and we can't risk that. We are all still recovering from our losses from the Fourth Shinobi World War. You are to remain in full ANBU gear. I do not exactly wish for you to unmask yourselves, but if you really want to, you can take them off only after you have been at Hogwarts for 6 months. This is a mission that will last a year. It has been a while since the wizarding dimension has contacted us, and so you will all represent the ninja continent, and I expect you to do your best. Is that clear? Tsunade eyed the 9 shinobi, who gave her stiff nods. Do you accept this mission? One by one, they all said, I accept. But Tsunade said. Fox is captain for this mission. Go and pack. You all have exactly 1 hour before you have to leave. Don't you dare be late. Guards? Harry repeated. Guards. I don't need guards. Calm down, Harry, Sirius Black, his godfather said. Let us explain. Harry Potter had just arrived at number 12, Grimmauld Place. After a heated one-sided shouting match upstairs with Ron and Hermione, they had all gone down to dinner after the meeting was finished. At the table, Sirius had just told Harry about the ninja guards. Voldemort has risen, Harry, Lupin said quietly. And he's after you. You need all the protection you can get. But, guards. Harry said furiously. I can take care of myself. I'm sure you can, Sirius said. But Dumbledore wants this, Harry. Before he could say another word, there was a whizzing noise and suddenly, 9 strange people appeared into their midst. Kami-sama, Nanigata. 1. Batashi wa kanjite byoki nai sukashi. Armogaku kadesu ka. Hi. Ermogai desu ka. Kokoda kureanto gadesu ka. Pereira wa desu ka. The foreign language exchanged by these people was quiet and brisk. They stepped into the light to find about half a dozen wands trained on them. Nani? One of them whispered. Harry had his wand pointed at them as well. Death Eaters, he hissed. Calm down people, a voice growled. Mad-Eye Moody stumped into the room. These are the ninja guards. What? Sirius asked, flabbergasted. They look like Death Eaters. Are you sure they're not in league with Voldemort? Look carefully at them, Moody growled. Harry stared and found that he was right. Their masks were in the shape of snarling animals and they wore black clothes and grey armor. A few carried scrolls, they all had some kind of sword tied to their backs and one of them had a type of gourd strapped to his back. What are they saying? Wolf asked, his fearful eyes trained steadily on the wizard in front of them, the one with a strange whizzing blue eye. Fox stepped forward. Dumbledore, he said clearly, hoping that they would understand. To his relief, understanding shone brightly in the wizard's and witch's eyes. Moody pulled out his wand and the ninja tensed. Hawk flashed behind him, a kunai to his neck. The watching wizards gasped and repointed their wands at him. What are you doing? Hawk hissed. Of course, Moody didn't understand what was said, but he got the gist of it. Relax, Moody said in badly pronounced Japanese, I am simply casting a spell over you, so you can understand us. Hawk slowly took the kunai away from his neck. Moody took that as a confirmation to proceed, and with a few muttered words, he cast the spell over them. Can you understand us now? Moody asked. Yes, Fox said. This spell enables you to speak and understand English, as well as retaining your Japanese, Moody said. Harry couldn't take his eyes off the ninja. The speed in which Hawk moved behind Moody was unbelievable. Bloody hell, Ron whispered. They're the ones guarding you? Hermione was staring at them with a shocked look on her face. Apparently she was more worried about the weapons they carried and how they used them. "This is your charge," Moody grunted, jabbing a finger at Harry. "I believe your leader has briefed you on the rest of your mission." "Yes," Fox said coolly. He turned his face towards Harry, and the boy didn't like the way his eyes probed him, sizing him up. Those eyes, they were cold, much too cold. Finally, they were turned away. "My name is Fox. I am captain." Fox had blonde hair, and from what Harry could see of his eyes, they were sky blue. Raccoon. Raccoon had blood-red hair and jade-green eyes. Slug. Slug, strangely, had pastel pink hair and emerald green eyes. Hat. She had long blue hair with bangs that framed her masks and curiously pearly-colored eyes that had no pupils. Dragon. Dragon had chocolate brown eyes and brown hair that was tied in two twin buns on either side of her head. Hawk. Hawk had long coffee brown hair and the same eyes as Cat. Stag. His black hair was tied up in a ponytail that greatly resembled a pineapple. Wolf. Wolf had spiky brown hair and slitted eyes. By his side was an enormous white dog. "This is Akamaru." Dove. Dove was a blonde girl whose hair was tied up in a high ponytail with a long fringe that covered half of her mask. She had sapphire eyes. "My name is Moody," the ex-Auror growled. "Remus Lupin." Tonks. Sirius Black. Harry Potter. Ron Weasley. Hermione Granger. Molly Weasley. Arthur Weasley. Bill Weasley. "You will meet the rest of the Order members later," Moody said. The ninja said nothing. "I'll, show you to your rooms, shall I?" Mrs. Weasley said hastily as silence descended upon them. "There you can get unpacked and everything." Harry realized that the shinobi were only carrying packs and wondered how those backpacks could equip them with everything they needed for a year. "Come on." The ninja left the room, and when they did, it seemed as though the temperature rose up a little again. "I don't like them," Harry said to Ron and Hermione. "Did you see their eyes?" The other two nodded, not being able to say what they saw because it could not really be put into words without it sounding strange. Their eyes were filled with too much darkness. They were bottomless, empty, and they frightened Harry. Raccoon sighed on his bed, his green eyes staring up at the ceiling. The house reeked of decay and misuse, and Raccoon didn't like it. He decided to read the mission scroll given to them before they left to keep his mind off things, such as his hidden worry over Tamari and Kankuro back in Suna. There was a knock on his door, and Slug opened it. "Raccoon, dinner is ready," she said. "Come down." Raccoon slipped off his bed and joined the pink-haired girl. "What do you think of Potter-san?" he asked as they walked down the stairs. Slug shrugged her shoulders. "He seems a little childish." Dove probed into the mind of Granger-san and Weasley-san and found out that just before we arrived, Potter-san shouted at his friends because he felt left out, Slug said. "And I know that it's an invasion of their privacy," she added, catching Raccoon's look, "but it's for the mission." "Yeah," Raccoon murmured. "I know." Dinner was awkward. Normally the wizards and witches were extremely chatty and liked to laugh a lot, but in the presence of the ninja, it seemed as though a blanket of silence fell on top of them and no one was willing to lift it off. Raccoon stared at the food on his plate and then lifted his mask slightly so that nothing more than his mouth was showing. A second later, the meal vanished. Those who were watching him almost choked on their food. Raccoon replaced the mask again and sat there. "Why isn't anyone talking?" Raccoon wondered. "Are they all normally this quiet? When does the school term start?" Cat asked into the silence, having finished her food as well. The magical folk, having heard her voice for the first time, were surprised to hear how sweet it sounded. "About a month or so," Hermione said. "It starts on the 1st of September." No one talked after that, and when everyone had finished, they all just stared at one another. "Nearly time for bed, I think," said Mrs. Weasley, standing up to clear the dishes. "Not just yet, Molly," said Sirius, pushing away his empty plate and turning to look at Harry. "You know, I'm surprised at you. I thought the first thing you'd do when you got here would to start asking questions about Voldemort." The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Where seconds before it had been awkwardly silent, it was now alert, even tense. A frisson had won around the table at the mention of Voldemort's name. Lupin, who had been about to take a sip of wine, lowered his goblet slowly, looking wary. "I did," said Harry indignantly. "I asked Ron and Hermione, but they said we're not allowed in the order, so." "And they're quite right," said Mrs. Weasley. "You're too young." She was sitting bolt upright in her chair, her fists clenched on its arms, her face livid. "Since when does someone have to be in the Order of the Phoenix to ask questions?" asked Sirius. "Harry's been trapped in that muggle house for a month. He's got the right to know what's been happen." "Hang on," interrupted George loudly. "How come Harry gets his questions answered?" said Fred angrily. "We've been trying to get stuff out of you for a month and you haven't told us a stinking thing," said George. "You're too young, you're not in the order," said Fred, in a high-pitched voice that sounded uncannily like his mother's. "Harry's not even of age." "It's not my fault you haven't been told what the Order's doing," said Sirius calmly, "that's your parents' decision. Harry, on the other hand. It's not up to you to decide what's good for Harry," said Mrs. Weasley sharply. The expression on her normally kind face looked dangerous. "You haven't forgotten what Dumbledore said, I suppose." "Which bit?" Sirius asked politely, but with the air of a man readying himself for a fight. "The bit about not telling Harry more than he needs to know," said Mrs. Weasley, placing a heavy emphasis on the last 3 words. "I don't intend to tell him more than he needs to know, Molly," said Sirius. "But as he was the one who saw Voldemort come back, he has more right than most to." "He's not a member of the Order of the Phoenix," said Mrs. Weasley. "He's only 15 and he's dealt with as much as most in the Order," said Sirius, "and more than some." "No one's denying what he's done," said Mrs. Weasley, her voice rising, her fists trembling on the arms of her chair. "But he's not a child," said Sirius impatiently. "He's not an adult either," said Mrs. Weasley. She was about to continue before a cough broke the two of them out of their glaring contest. "We're still here," Stagg drawled. "So tell me, what has Potter San done to be treated this uniquely?" Wilf asked, his voice mocking. "After all, you two are even fighting over him and he seems to receive special treatment, allowing him to get information from you guys while his friends stay in the dark." Harry bristled at the way Wilf worded his sentences. It was as if he was scorning him. The other people at the table seemed to jerk in surprise as well. "Let's start the highly colored life story of Harry Potter, shall we?" Dove said, her voice sarcastic. "After all, we need to know about our charge and the world he lives in, don't we?" The magical folk hesitated and glanced at each other and then finally to Harry. "All right," Harry said. 15 years ago, a wizard by the name of Voldemort reigned supreme," Sirius said. "He terrified the wits out of the wizarding world and everyone feared him. His name was known everywhere, but people did not speak it out loud. They treated it like a taboo. They still do, even now. Voldemort came for Harry's parents when Harry was a baby. He killed his father, James Potter, and his mother, Lily Potter. When he tried to kill Harry, he couldn't for some reason. The spell backfired onto him and he was left powerless and fled. Harry then became known as the boy who lived. I lived with my aunt, uncle and cousin," Harry said, taking up the story. "They didn't like me. When I was 11, I was admitted into Hogwarts. In my first year, I faced Voldemort for the first time. He had entered the body of a teacher and tried to kill me. I got away. In my second year, Voldemort released the basilisk in our school. It petrified a few students. I killed it. In my third year, I found out that Sirius was my godfather. In my fourth year, I got entered into the Triwizard Tournament. During the third task, I was transported to a graveyard. There, Voldemort gained his own body. He had risen again. There, a fellow champion named Cedric Diggory was killed." There was silence for a few seconds. "You know, I was only joking," Dove said wryly. "I didn't exactly want to hear your life story." And I let you imagine how embarrassed Harry was feeling after she said that. "So you've only seen one death?" Dragon asked. "Yeah," Harry said. The way she said it was unsettling. It was as though she was almost disappointed to find that he had only seen one person die. "Oh," Dragon said. "Okay Harry, what do you want to know?" Sirius asked, trying to draw them all back to the subject at hand. Mrs. Weasley, still angry, sent Ginny off to bed. "Where's Voldemort?" Harry said, ignoring the renewed shudders and winces at the name. "What's he doing?" "I've been trying to watch the Muggle news and there hasn't been anything that looks like him yet, no funny deaths or anything." "That's because there haven't been any funny deaths yet," said Sirius, "not as far as we know, anyway, and we know quite a lot." "More than he thinks we do, anyway," said Lupin. "How come he's stopped killing people?" Harry asked. He knew Voldemort had murdered more than once in the last year alone. "Because he doesn't want to draw attention to himself," said Sirius. "It would have been too dangerous for him. His comeback didn't come off quite the way he wanted it to, you see. He messed it up." "Or rather, you messed it up for him," said Lupin, with a satisfied smile. "How?" Harry asked perplexed. "You weren't supposed to survive," said Sirius. "Nobody apart from his Death Eaters was supposed to know he'd come back. But you survived to bear witness. And the last person he wanted to alert to his return the moment he got back was Dumbledore," said Lupin. "And you made sure Dumbledore knew at once. How has that helped?" Harry asked. "Are you kidding?" said Bill incredulously. "Dumbledore was the only one you know who was afraid of." "They don't say his name, so they say you know who instead," Raccoon muttered to Fox. The ninja had sat there in silence as they gave Harry more and more information, looking on stonily. "That's enough." Mrs. Weasley spoke from the shadows beside the door. Her arms were crossed and she looked furious. "I want you in bed, now. All of you," she added, looking around at Fred, George, Ron and Hermione. "You can't boss us," Fred began. "Watch me," snarled Mrs. Weasley. She was trembling slightly as she looked at Sirius. "You've given Harry plenty of information. Any more and you might just as well induct him into the order straight away." "Why not?" said Harry quickly. "I'll join, I want to join, I want to fight." "Hell no." It was not Mrs. Weasley who spoke this time, but Fawkes. Harry glared at the guard. "From what I've heard, this is dangerous for the likes of you," Fawkes said softly, his eyes steely. "You believe you can fight. You haven't even finished your schooling yet and you want to join an organization against one of the greatest wizards in your world. I don't think so. You have no idea what the world is like outside. And if you join, we're going to have an even harder time watching your back." "Too troublesome," Stagg muttered. "I think they're right, Harry," Lupin said. "There are dangers involved of which you can have no idea, any of you. I think Molly's right, Sirius. We've said enough." Sirius half shrugged back but did not argue. Mrs. Weasley beckoned imperiously to her sons and Hermione. One by one they stood up and Harry, recognizing defeat, followed suit. Mrs. Weasley followed them upstairs looking grim. "I want you all to go straight to bed, no talking," she said as they reached the first landing. "All right, Ron, Harry," said Mrs. Weasley on the second landing, pointing them into their bedroom. "Off to bed with you." Mrs. Weasley closed the door behind Harry with a sharp snap. Ron changed and turned off the light. Harry climbed into bed. "Anyway," Ron said, "what do I reckon?" Harry didn't need to ask what Ron meant. "Well, they didn't tell us much we couldn't have guessed, did they?" he said. He was about to continue when suddenly the hairs on the back of his neck started to rise. There was another presence in the room. "Stop talking," whispered a voice out of the gloom. Harry and Ron tried not to yelp as they spotted Raccoon standing at the foot of their beds. His mask stood out from the black. It was a little eerie to see a raccoon floating around in the darkness. When Raccoon was sure that Harry and Ron would not talk again, he vanished. Ron's wide eyes stared from his bed to Harry's. They dared not talk again, and it wasn't long before Harry fell asleep. The shinobi stayed downstairs after their charge and his friends had gone to bed. Raccoon had gone up once to check on them and then returned. "Fox, have you received word from Hokage-sama about the Akatsuki?" Wolf asked. Fox shook his head. "No. Besides, it's too soon," Fox said. "Fox, they're after you," Slug said, her voice cool, but there was a tiny trace of worry in her voice. "They don't know about the different dimensions," Stagg said. "So it might take a while for the Akatsuki to realize that Fox isn't even on the ninja continent anymore. Right now, we have to worry over this Voldemort," Cat said quietly. "We haven't even met our client yet," Dove said, her soft voice laced with annoyance. "I'm sure we will," Dragon said, "either during our stay here or at the school." "I hear the kids talking," Hawk said coldly. "Should I go shut them up?" "Go ahead," Fox said with a sigh. "All right, the rest of you please go to sleep. I'll watch the house tonight." After quiet murmurs from his team, Fox was left alone in the sitting room. The other wizards and witches had all left already or gone to bed. Chapter 2. The Hearing in Hogwarts. "Otter-san has a hearing?" Fox repeated, eyeing Lupin. "Yes. On the 12th of August," Lupin said. "Are you going to accompany him?" "Yes," Fox said. "And why does the brat have a hearing?" asked a cold voice. Hawk had entered, his pupil-less eyes fixed on Lupin and then onto Harry, who was also in the room. "Because some dementors arrived in Little Whinging and attacked me and my cousin," Harry said, trying not to sound angry. His temper had been going haywire over the last few days. It wasn't getting any better considering that most of the guards called him a brat, a gawky, whatever that was, a child. Harry was getting rather sick of it. Even the female ninja showed no compassion, and although they didn't say it to his face, Harry had heard Slug and Dove call him an idiot and a troublemaker. Harry didn't even know what he was doing wrong to be called those names. Apparently they were reading some old reports on Harry which had been sent to them from Dumbledore. Dumbledore, another person Harry was kinda pissed at. Dumbledore seemed to be avoiding Harry, and when they did meet face to face, the headmaster wouldn't even look at Harry in the eyes. This, combined with the name calling from the guards, was making Harry a little edgy. "What's a dementor?" Slug asked. "A thing," was all Harry could say. "A thing," Slug repeated, her voice mocking. "Please elaborate." Harry resisted the urge to pound her face in, female or not. A dementor is a dark creature, considered one of the foulest to inhabit the world. Dementors feed off human happiness and thus cause depression and despair to anyone near them. They can also consume a person's soul, leaving their victims in a permanent vegetative state and thus are often referred to as soul-sucking fiends and are known to leave a person as an empty shell. Lupin said. For a moment, Harry thought he saw something flicker in Fox's eyes. It was almost like recognition. Pain. After that second, though, it was gone and the usual frostiness descended upon those eyes once again. "So what's the hearing for?" Hawk asked. I used magic to fend the Dementors off, Harry said, in front of my cousin, who is a muggle. You're not allowed to show magic in front of a muggle. A muggle is something you call people with no magical core, correct? Slug asked. Yes, Lupin said. And so Potter-san has to go to this hearing because he performed magic in front of a muggle, and that is illegal. Fox said. Both Harry and Lupin nodded. Alright then, Fox said finally. Harry, dear, Mrs. Weasley called from upstairs. Could you please come and help us clean out this room? We need an extra pair of hands. Coming, Harry called back. Harry glanced at the guards one last time before heading upstairs. Lupin looked at Fox, his eyes hard. Could you be more polite to Harry? Lupin asked. Why? Fox said nonchalantly. Harry has been through a lot, Lupin said. Last year he saw a fellow student die, he still thinks it's his fault. Your name calling isn't really helping, you know. And how does calling him a brat relate to that incident? Hawk asked. Lupin shrugged. His self-esteem, Lupin said. His self-esteem, Fox repeated scathingly, because his self-esteem is so important to us. Look, Lupin-san, we're just here to protect him and Hogwarts. We're not here to baby him, you know. Lupin sighed. There really was no way to make the ninja any nicer. No, it's just that you calling him a brat will signify to him that he is still a child and he feels that it is because he is a child that he wasn't able to save Cedric, Lupin said. He is still just a child, Slug said. What? You're no better, you know, came a voice from the doorway. Sirius stood there, dislike etched on his face. Your voices are not that of adults. How old are you, exactly? We are all 17, Dragon and Hawk are 18, Fox said. Surprise flashed across Sirius's face, and then he shrugged. See what I mean? You are barely 2 years older than him, Sirius said. Don't talk about the world as if you have seen it. Laxan, I can tell that you have seen the world, both the good and the bad, Hawk said. But we have as well. We are no longer children. We do not come from the wizarding dimension, Blacksan. You forget we are ninja. Sirius stared at them for a second, and then he sighed. Yeah, you're right. I did forget, he said softly. Easy to forget when you have the eyes of a child, but they bear the burden of an adult. On the day of the hearing, Harry awoke at 5:30 in the morning as abruptly and completely as if someone had yelled in his ear. For a few moments he lay immobile as the prospect of the disciplinary hearing filled every tiny particle of his brain, then, unable to bear it, he leapt out of bed and put on his glasses. Harry scrambled into his clothes and crossed the room, stepped out on the landing and closed the door softly behind him. He walked quietly down the stairs, past the heads of Creature's ancestors, and down into the kitchen. He had expected it to be empty, but when he reached the door he heard the soft rumble of voices on the other side. He pushed it open and saw Mr. and Mrs. Weasley, Sirius, Lupin, Tonks, Dragon and Cat sitting there almost as though they were waiting for him. All were fully dressed except for Mrs. Weasley, who was wearing a quilted purple dressing gown. She fussed over him, clearly nervous as well, and placed some toast and marmalade in front of him. Mr. Weasley checked his watch and looked up at Harry. I think we'll go now, he said. We're a bit early, but I think you'll be better off at the ministry than hanging around here. Okay, said Harry automatically, dropping his toast and getting to his feet. Well, see you later. The other inhabitants gave him advice and wished him luck. He followed Mr. Weasley upstairs and along the hall. Dragon and Cat tailed him silently. They walked along the street, turning heads with Mr. Weasley's strange attire and the guards' armor and masks, but none of them really cared. They went on a train, which the ninja didn't really like, and got off at the very heart of London. They walked until they reached a street that contained several rather shabby-looking offices, a pub and an overflowing skip. Here we are, said Mr. Weasley brightly, pointing at an old red telephone box, which was missing several panes of glass and stood before a heavily graffitied wall. After you, Harry, Dragon, Cat. He opened the telephone box door. Harry stepped inside, the ninja flitting in behind him. Mr. Weasley, I think this might be out of order, Harry said. No, I'm sure it's fine, said Mr. Weasley, holding the receiver above his head and peering at the dial. Let's see 6. He dialed the number, 24 another 4 and another 2. As the dial whirred smoothly back into place, a cool female voice sounded inside the telephone box, not from the receiver in Mr. Weasley's hand, but as loudly and plainly as though an invisible woman were standing right beside them. Welcome to the Ministry of Magic. Please state your name and business. Arthur Weasley, misuse of Muggle artifacts office, here to escort Harry Potter, who has been asked to attend a disciplinary hearing, along with Dragon and Cat who are guards. Thank you, said the cool female voice. Visitors, please take the badge and attach it to the front of your robes. There was a click and a rattle, and Harry saw something slide out of the metal chute where returned coins usually appeared. He picked up a badge. It was a square silver badge with Harry Potter, disciplinary hearing on it. He pinned it to the front of his t-shirt and handed the other 2 badges to Cat and Dragon. The ninja pinned the badges onto their black clothing. Visitors to the ministry, you are required to submit a search and present your wand for registration at the security desk, which is located at the far end of the atrium. The floor of the telephone box shuddered. They were sinking slowly into the ground. Harry watched apprehensively as the pavement seemed to rise up past the glass windows of the telephone box until darkness closed over their heads. After about a minute, a chink of golden light illuminated his feet and widening, rose up his body until it hit him in the face and he had to blink to stop his eyes watering. "The Ministry of Magic wishes you a pleasant day," said the woman's voice. The door of the telephone box sprang open and Mr. Weasley stepped out of it, followed by Harry, Dragon and Cat. "Death Eater!" a woman shrieked as soon as the two ninja appeared. Cat glanced at Dragon, who shrugged. A spell was sent their way, red in color, and Cat stepped to the side, causing the spell to leave a black mark on the floor where it landed. "Death Eater!" Soon, the shouts of "Death Eater!" echoed through the atrium. There was a large ruckus after that as Mr. Weasley attempted to calm everyone down. The whole room was in disarray. Papers flying everywhere, running witches and wizards, blinding spells shooting across the room. "Stop!" Mr. Weasley bellowed. Harry flinched. He had never heard him yell that loud before. Silence fell as everyone looked at Mr. Weasley. "They are not Death Eaters," Mr. Weasley said calmly. "Look at them closely." But the masks, Arthur," a wizard spluttered. "They are not Death Eaters," Mr. Weasley said firmly, "now please let us be on our way." The four of them moved through the throng of people who made a passage to let them pass. "Over here," said Mr. Weasley, and they stepped out of the stream of ministry employees heading for the Golden Gates. Seated at a desk to the left, beneath a sign saying security, a badly shaven wizard in peacock blue robes looked up as they approached. "I'm escorting a visitor," said Mr. Weasley, gesturing towards Harry. "Cause quite an uproar," said the wizard. "Now step over here." Harry walked closer to him, and the wizard held up a long golden rod, thin and flexible as a car aerial, and passed it up and down Harry back and front. He did the same for Dragon and Cat, although a little warily. "What does that do?" Cat muttered. "Don't know. Some kind of security thing," Dragon said. "Wand," grunted the security wizard at Harry, putting down the golden instrument and holding out his wand. Harry produced his wand. The wizard dropped it onto a strange brass instrument, which looked something like a set of scales with only one dish. It began to vibrate. A narrow strip of parchment came speeding out of a slit in the base. The wizard tore this off and read the writing on it. 11 inches Phoenix Feather Core, been in use 4 years. That correct? "Yes," said Harry nervously. "I keep this," said the wizard, impaling the slip of parchment on a small brass spike. "You get this back." He thrust the wand at Harry. "And you?" he added, eyeing Cat and Dragon. They don't have wands," Mr. Weasley said hastily, dragging Harry away. "Thank you, Eric." They got into a lift filled with people, all of whom stayed well away from the ninja. Mr. Weasley chatted to a few wizards until they reached Level 2, Department of Magical Law Enforcement, including the Improper Use of Magic Office, Auror Headquarters and Wizengamot Administration Services. They passed the Auror Headquarters, where Mr. Weasley and Kingsley spoke to each other as if they hardly knew one another, but then dropped hints about the order. They then went to Mr. Weasley's office, where Perkins burst in, babbling about how the time of the hearing had changed. That caused Mr. Weasley to grab Harry's arm and they streaked away, running to the old courtroom 10. Cat and Dragon hurried after them, ghosting along. They bolted into the lift, went down back to the atrium, ran down some stairs where they finally reached courtroom 10 and Mr. Weasley shoved Harry inside. Mr. Weasley paced outside nervously while Cat and Dragon stood there. "What can you see?" Dragon murmured. "A large room, let's see all the seats are filled, Potter-san is sitting in a chair," Cat reported. A movement caught her eye and she turned to see a tall wizard with a long, silver herd, accompanied by a short woman. "Dumbledore," Mr. Weasley said. Dumbledore smiled at the man. "So this is Dumbledore, our client," Cat thought. "He reminds me of the third Hokage." "Guards," Dumbledore said with a smile. "I apologize for not introducing myself earlier. I would do it now, in fact, but I must be getting to the hearing." "Understood," Cat said softly. Dumbledore entered the courtroom, leaving the woman outside. No one talked. A few minutes later, she was summoned inside. She emerged 10 minutes later and waited in silence with the rest of them. "Dumbledore-san seems to be arguing Potter-san's case rather well," Cat whispered. "I think they're voting now. It seems as though the witch, I believe her name is Amelia Bones, and Amelia is my name too, is quite a fair person." "You said they were voting," Dragon said sharply. Cat nodded. "Potter-san has been cleared of all charges," Cat said. "They are going out now." She switched off her Byakugan. "How did it go?" Raccoon asked when he spotted Cat and Dragon. "Cleared," Dragon said simply. Time passed, and finally, on the day before they had to go back to Hogwarts, the book lists arrived. With it came the excitement of the prefect's badge. First came the silence, then the screaming, then the tears shed by Mrs. Weasley. "What's a prefect?" Wilf asked. Everyone else shrugged. That night there was a small party in honor of Hermione and Ron becoming prefects. The ninjas stayed up in their rooms. They weren't party people. Near the end of the night, Fox was walking down the stairs when he heard sobbing coming from a room. "Hello?" Fox asked out loud. The sobbing continued. Fox opened a door where he thought the sobbing was coming from. Someone was cowering against the dark wall, her wand in her hand, her whole body shaking with sobs. Sprawled on the dusty old carpet in a patch of moonlight, clearly dead, was Ron. Fox stared at the corpse for a second and then sensed that it wasn't human. Was it some kind of dark creature? Whatever it was, Fox knew that he needed other wizards or witches to deal with it. "Mrs. Weasley," Fox said softly. "Get a grip." Mrs. Weasley started at the sound of her name. "Someone." Fox raised his voice. "I need help in here." The boggart kept changing shape, seemingly oblivious to the extra person in the room. Crack. Dead twins. Crack. Dead Percy. Crack. Dead Harry. What's going on? Lupin had come running into the room, closely followed by Sirius and Harry, with Moody stumping along behind them. Lupin looked from Mrs. Weasley to the dead Harry on the floor and seemed to understand in an instant. Pulling out his own wand, he said, very firmly and clearly. "Ridiculous." Harry's body vanished. A silvery orb hung in the air over the spot where it had lain. Lupin waved his wand once more and the orb vanished in a puff of smoke. "What was that?" Fox asked Moody, moving away as Mrs. Weasley sobbed her heart out on Lupin's shoulder. "Dark creature," Moody growled. "Lives in dark places, takes on the form of what you fear most." What you fear most, Fox thought. What would that be for me? Slug awoke instantly and rolled out of bed, packing her things without hesitation. Nearby, she could hear her fellow teammates wake up as well. It was 5 in the morning, but she was sure that other order members would be awake. "Morning, Slug," Cat said as they met on the landing and going down together. "Good morning," Slug said. They found the other ninja in the kitchen. Wilf was sitting at the table looking at a newspaper with Dove reading it behind him, her hand on his shoulder. Raccoon and Hawk were sitting in front of empty plates. Stag was standing in the corner and it was evident that beneath his mask, he was yawning widely. Fox was asking Dragon something about his kunai. Mrs. Weasley was having a cup of tea and one by one, other members of the house woke up and went down to the kitchen. "Oh my goodness," Mrs. Weasley gasped, looking at her watch. "They have to wake up now. They'll be late for the train." She almost ran upstairs and woke everyone. Within the next 10 minutes, there was a full-on commotion going on inside the house. It started with Fred and George bewitched their trunks to fly down the stairs, hitting Ginny in the process and causing her to fall down 2 flights. This resulted in Ginny's yell, which in turn caused the curtains from Mrs. Black's portrait's curtain to fly open and she and Mrs. Weasley started screaming. "Could have done her a serious injury, you idiots. Filthy half-breeds, besmirching the house of my fathers." "Well, at least this house is lively," Fox said, staring around at the chaos. "I don't like this train," Hawk muttered. The ninja were in their own compartment at the front of the train. It was unsettling, really, for the shinobi, who hadn't been on any mechanical device in their lives, with the exception of Cat and Dragon, when they took the train to go to the Ministry of Magic for Harry's hearing. "Wolf, go and sit with Potter-san," Fox instructed. "I'll swap you over when we're halfway there." "Hi," Wolf mumbled. He and Akamaru left the carriage. "Okay, the plan outline for the year is, to put it simply, guard Hogwarts and make sure Potter-san doesn't do anything stupid," Fox said. "And we have to look out for the Akatsuki. If they find out that we're here to protect Potter-san, they may capture him for a trade," Stag said. "We can't risk that." "I know," Fox said. They spent the rest of the train journey discussing tactics. Meanwhile, Wilf was sitting in the compartment containing Harry and his friends, including Luna Lovegood and Neville Longbottom. He looked suspiciously at the little cactus plant that Neville Longbottom held in his hand. "Mimbulus Mimbletonia," Neville said proudly. "It's really, really rare. I don't know if there's one in the greenhouse at Hogwarts, even." Wolf looked at the thing. It was pulsating slightly, giving it the rather sinister look of some diseased internal organ. "Does it do anything?" Harry asked, trying to sound polite. "Loads of stuff," said Neville proudly. "It's got an amazing defensive mechanism. Here, hold Trevor for me." He dumped the toad into Harry's lap and took a quill from his school bag. Luna Lovegood's popping eyes appeared over the top of her upside-down magazine again to watch what Neville was doing. "Please don't tell me he's going to show us what that thing does," Wolf thought, looking with distaste at the plant. Neville held the Mimbulus Mimbletonia up to his eyes, his tongue between his teeth, chose his spot and gave the plant a sharp prod with the tip of his quill. "Great." Wolf watched the plant contract. Although it was so minute he doubted whether the magical folk could see it, and before it could expand again, he and Akamaru were out the door, not very keen to stay in the same compartment as the plant. Lucky he moved so fast, because a second later, liquid squirted from every boil on the plant. Thick, stinking dark green jets of it. They hit the ceiling, the windows, and splattered Luna Lovegood's magazine. Ginny, who had flung her arms in front of her face just in time, merely looked as though she was wearing a slimy green hat, but Harry, whose hands had been busy preventing Trevor's escape, received a faceful. It smelled like rancid manure. Outside, Wolf almost choked as the disgusting scent reached him. That's gross, Wolf thought. He stepped aside to let a girl pass, and she opened the door of Harry's compartment. "Oh hello, Harry," said the girl nervously, bad time." Wolf saw Harry wipe the lenses of his glasses and look up to see the girl smiling up at him. "Oh hi," said Harry blankly. Said Cho, "Well just thought I'd say hello bye then." Rather pink in the face, she closed the door and departed. Harry slumped back in his seat and groaned. "Never mind," said Ginny bracingly. "Look, we can easily get rid of all this." She pulled out her wand. Skurgify. The stinksop vanished. Wolf came back in, Akamaru padding along. The dog almost took up the whole compartment. An hour came and went, and Ron and Hermione, having gone to the prefect's carriage, had not returned. Harry, Ginny and Neville had finished their pumpkin pasties and were busy swapping chocolate frog cards when the compartment door slid open and Ron and Hermione walked in. Ron walked abruptly into Akamaru before the canine moved. Wolf was sitting there, silent and stiff, glaring holes into the wall opposite him. "I'm starving," said Ron, stowing Pigwidgeon next to Hedwig, grabbing a chocolate frog from Harry and throwing himself into the seat next to him. He ripped open the wrapper, bit off the frog's head and leaned back with his eye closed as though he had had a very exhausting morning. The compartment door slid open and Slug stood on the other side. Wolf stood up immediately and he and Akamaru left. Slug entered and took his seat. "Well, there are 2 fifth-year prefects from each house," Hermione said, talking to fill the silence. "Boy and girl from each." "And guess who's a Slytherin prefect?" said Ron, still with his eyes closed. "Malfoy," replied Harry at once, certain his worst fear would be confirmed. "Course," said Ron bitterly, stuffing the rest of the frog into his mouth and taking another. "And that complete cow pansy Parkinson," said Hermione viciously. "How she got to be prefect when she's thicker than a conkus troll?" "Who are the Hufflepuffs?" Harry asked. "Ernie Macmillan and Hannah Abbott," said Ron thickly. "And Anthony Goldstein and Padma Paddle for Ravenclaw," said Hermione. How nice it would be, Slug thought, to be so innocent you can sit in a carriage and talk about who got the position of prefect. Whatever that is, I'm sure it's some kind of leadership role. I don't even remember when I lost my innocence. Maybe it was when I killed my first victim, knowing it was for the mission. The first kill. The compartment door slid open once again. Harry looked around. He had expected this, but that did not make the sight of Draco Malfoy smirking at him from between his cronies Crabbe and Goyle any more enjoyable. "What do you want, Malfoy?" he said aggressively, before Malfoy could open his mouth. "This kid's name is Malfoy," Slug thought. "Manners, Potter, or I'll have to give you detention," drawled Malfoy, whose sleek blonde hair and pointed chin were just like his father's. "You see, I, unlike you, have been made a prefect, which means that I, unlike you, have the power to hand out punishments." "Yeah," said Harry, "but you, unlike me, are a git, so get out and leave us alone." Ron, Hermione, Ginny and Neville laughed. Malfoy's lip curled. He looked around and saw Slug. "And who are you?" he asked contemptuously. "I," said Slug coolly, "am Slug." "Slug?" Malfoy repeated. "Are your parents daft or something? Who names their kid Slug?" "Better than being named Malfoy," Slug retorted. Malfoy looked at her disdainfully and then turned his attention back to Harry. "Tell me, how does it feel being second best to Weasley, Potter?" he asked. "Shut up, Malfoy," said Hermione sharply. "I seem to have touched a nerve," said Malfoy, smirking. "Well, just watch yourself, Potter, because I'll be dogging your footsteps in case you step out of line." "Get out," said Hermione, standing up. Sniggering, Malfoy gave Harry a last malicious look and departed, with Crabbe and Goyle lumbering along in his wake. Hermione slammed the apartment door behind them and turned to look at Harry. "Dogging?" Slug said dryly. Hermione shot the guard a look. They could not talk freely in front of Luna and Neville. The weather remained undecided as they traveled further and further north. Rain spattered the windows in a half-hearted way, and then the sun put in a feeble appearance before clouds drifted over it once more. When darkness fell and lamps came on inside the carriages, Luna rolled up the quibbler, put it carefully away in her bag, and took to staring at everyone in the compartment instead. "We'd better change," said Hermione at last, and all of them opened their trunks with difficulty and pulled on their school robes. She and Ron pinned their prefect badges carefully to their chests. At last the train began to slow down and they heard the usual racket up and down it as everybody scrambled to get their luggage and pets assembled, ready to get off. As Ron and Hermione were supposed to supervise all this, they disappeared from the carriage again, leaving Harry and the others to look after Crookshanks and Pigwidgeon. Slug, somehow, had also disappeared. Harry shuffled off the train amongst all the other students and wondered where Hagrid was after spotting Professor Grubbly Plank calling the first years towards her. He was shunted forwards onto the dark rain-washed road outside Hogsmeade Station. Here stood the 100 or so horseless stagecoaches that always took the students above first year up to the castle. Harry glanced quickly at them, turned away to keep a lookout for Ron and Hermione, then did a double take. The coaches were no longer horseless. There were creatures standing between the carriage shafts. If he had had to give them a name, he supposed he would have called them horses, although there was something reptilian about them, too. They were completely fleshless, their black coats clinging to their skeletons, of which every bone was visible. Their heads were dragonish, and their pupilless eyes were wide and staring. Wings sprouted from each with their vast black leathery wings that looked as though they ought to belong to giant bats. Standing still and quiet in the gathering gloom, the creatures looked eerie and sinister. Nearby, Fawkes was gazing intensely at these reptilian horses. Death horses, Fawkes thought, staring at them, they look like the horses of death. Good evening, Dumbledore said brightly, striding towards them in purple robes strewn with silver stars. The ninja were in a room that led directly to the Great Hall, and it's the room where the champions went into after their names were spat out of the Goblet of Fire in the 4th book. There, they were meeting Professor Albus Dumbledore for the first time, well, second, for Cat and Dragon. Dumbledore-san. Fawkes said quietly. The tall wizard nodded. I am Fawkes, Captain. One by one, the others introduced themselves to Dumbledore as well. After the introductions were made, the headmaster nodded happily at them. Apparently he didn't find them intimidating at all. Would you like me to introduce the staff to you? Or would you rather find out their names yourself? Dumbledore asked. We'll find out ourselves, said Fawkes. Very well, until I tell the students about you, may you please stay in here? Dumbledore requested. Yes, Fawkes said. Outside, Harry jumped as he recognized a witch sitting on a chair next to Dumbledore's. The Toad Woman. Umbridge, Harry said slowly. What? Hermione said. That woman, I think she's supposed to be our new defense against the dark arts teacher, Umbridge. She was at my hearing. She works for Fudge. Nice cardigan, said Ron, smirking. She works for Fudge. Hermione repeated, frowning. What on earth's she doing here, then? Oh no. The buzz of talk faded away as the first years trooped into the hall, lined up in front of the staff table, and watched as a three-legged stool was placed before them. The hat opened its mouth and burst into song. In times of old when I was new. And Hogwarts barely started. The founders of our noble school. Thought never to be parted. United by a common goal. They had the self-same yearning. To make the world's best magic school. And pass along their learning. Together we will build and teach. The four good friends decided. And never did they dream that they might someday be divided. For were there such friends anywhere? As Slytherin and Gryffindor. Unless it was the second pair. Of Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw. So how could such friendships fail? Why, I was there and so can tell. The whole sad, sorry tale. Said Slytherin, we'll teach just those whose ancestry is purest. Said Ravenclaw, we'll teach just those whose intelligence is surest. Said Gryffindor, we'll teach all those with brave deeds to their name. Said Hufflepuff, I'll teach the lot. And treat them just the same. These differences caused little strife. When first they came to light. For each of the four founders had a house in which they might take only those they wanted, so. For instance, Slytherin took only pure-blood wizards. Of great cunning, just like him. And only those of sharpest mind. Were taught by Ravenclaw. While the bravest and the boldest went to daring Gryffindor. But Hufflepuff, she took the rest. And taught them all she knew. Thus the houses and their founders retained friendships firm and true. So Hogwarts worked in harmony. For several happy years. But this discord crept among us. Feeding on our faults and fears. The houses that, like pillars four, had once held up our school. Now turned upon each other and, divided, sought to rule. And for a while it seemed the school must meet an early end. What with dueling and with fighting. And the clash of friend on friend. And at last there came a morning. When old Slytherin departed. And though the fighting then died out. He left us quite downhearted. And never since the founders four were whittled down to three. Have the houses been united. As they once were meant to be. And now the sorting hat is here. And you all know the score. I sort you into houses. Because that's what I'm for. But this year I'll go further. Listen closely to my song. Though condemned I am to split you. Still I worry that it's wrong. Though I must fulfill my duty. And must quarter every year. Still I wonder whether sorting may not bring the end I fear. Oh, know the perils, read the signs. The warning history shows. For our Hogwarts is in danger. From external deadly foes. And we must unite inside her. Or we'll crumble from within. I have told you, I have warned you. Let the sorting now begin. It seems that among the 4 founders of Hogwarts, Hufflepuff was the kindest, Cat said quietly after the hat had finished its song. Unity, Fox sighed. It's an important thing. That's how we won the 4th Shinobi World War, Stag agreed, because we were united. But Slytherin seemed the darkest, Wolf pointed out. Yes, but he was a great friend to Gryffindor at the beginning, Swan said. That kinda reminds me of Sasuke, Slug said. And you Fox. Me? Fox said, surprised. HN. Well, it kind of does, Hawk said. Fox is Gryffindor, Sasuke is Slytherin. Sasuke was good at first, just like Slytherin, Dragon said, and was friends with Gryffindor, which is like Fox. Sasuke turns evil, like Slytherin, and leaves, like Slytherin. That's quite true, Cat said. The shinobi lapsed into silence. A ninja waited patiently in the room as the sorting took place, listening to the cheers the various tables emitted. Finally, after the last girl was sorted into Hufflepuff, silence reigned again. To our newcomers, said Dumbledore in a ringing voice, welcome. To our old hands, welcome back. Now, before we start our feast, I have an important announcement to make. Due to the events that occurred last year, I have decided to hire some ninja guards to protect Hogwarts. They are here to help, and though their appearances may be a little frightening, I assure you that you will be perfectly safe, Dumbledore said cheerfully. Here they are. There are 8 poofs and a swirl of sand in front of the staff table, and when it cleared, 9 figures stood in its place. Harry, having already seen the guards before, wasn't surprised by their menacing looks. Others, however, stared at them with such great intensity it was considered rude. Many of them had their mouths open. They will be guarding the school, day and night. They will ensure that there are no nighttime wanders within the castle, Dumbledore said, his eyes sweeping the room. If you see anything suspicious, report to the guards. They also have the authority to dock points and give you detention. Fox stepped forward. Fox. Raccoon. Hawk. Slug. Hat. Dragon. Stag. Dove. Wolf. Yes, with that, let the feast begin, Dumbledore said merrily. He sat down, and instantly, the golden plates filled with food. The students tore their eyes away from the guards and down to the chow. The ninja retreated into the shadowy corners of the hall, melting into the darkness. When the students had all finished eating and the noise level in the hall was starting to creep upwards again, Dumbledore got to his feet once more. Talking ceased immediately as all turned to face the headmaster. Well, not that we are all digesting another magnificent feast, I bet a few moments of your attention for the usual start of term notices, said Dumbledore. First years ought to know that the Forbidden Forest in the grounds is out of bounds to students, and a few of our older students ought to know by now, too. Mr. Filch, the caretaker, has asked me, for what he tells me is the 462nd time, to remind you all that magic is not permitted in corridors between classes. As Dumbledore went on, Fox darted over to where Slug was standing. Who's the toad? He mumbled. Slug glanced over to where Umbridge was sitting. A teacher. She suggested. I saw her at Potterson's hearing, Cat said quietly, flitting over as well. Umbridge. She was one of the ones that voted Potterson conviction. So she doesn't like him, Fox muttered. Dumbledore stopped his speech and turned towards Umbridge, surprise evident on his face, but then he sat down smartly as she got up to say something. She had a fussy, girly, high-pitched voice that thoroughly irritated Fox's ears. However, he listened attentively, though the expression under his mask was not one of enjoyment. There will be interference within Hogwarts coming from the ministry, Cat said after Umbridge had finished. That's not a good thing, is it? No, it isn't, Slug murmured. That pretty much tells us that Umbridge is here as some sort of spy for the ministry. Well, she's not our problem, Fox said. Unless she gets in our way, we won't do anything. Of course we won't, Slug said. Why would we want to, anyway? She looks like she wants to swallow us whole. Let's go, Fox said. Raccoon and Hawk, Slug and Dragon and Dove and Cat split off from the rest of the guards and went with the Slytherins, the Ravenclaws and the Hufflepuffs to explain the rules they were expected to follow for the year. That night, the said ninja would be sleeping in the said house's common room. That left Fox, Wolf and Stag with Gryffindor. The 3 of them led the students to Gryffindor Tower and after giving the fat lady the password, slipped inside the common room. Attention, everyone, Fox called. While he explained the rules to the students, Stag and Wolf discreetly checked out every corner of the common room. When they were satisfied that it was safe, they relaxed their muscles. After the Gryffindors had gone to bed, Fox and Stag went out for patrol. "See you later," Fox said to Wolf. "Troublesome," Stag muttered, but followed his captain. Wolf fell asleep on an armchair, Akamaru at his feet, but like any other shinobi, kept his ears open. Chapter 3. Defense against the Dark Arts. Harry was glowering at this breakfast the next morning, stabbing at it and gritting his teeth. His fight last night with Seamus had been bitter, and he wondered how many attacks he would have to endure before everyone believed that Voldemort was back. He looked to his right and almost fell out of his seat when he saw Stag sitting there beside him. When did he get here? Then, Harry shrugged mentally, not caring. He didn't like the guards. They were rude, annoying and sadistic. In the Great Hall, Harry noticed that, once again, Hagrid was absent. He was starting to get slightly worried. Where was he? When the bell rang, he went off to class without a backwards glance towards the guard, Ron and Hermione following him. History of magic was easily the most boring subject devised by wizardkind. Professor Binns, their ghost teacher, had a wheezy, droning voice that was almost guaranteed to cause severe drowsiness within 10 minutes. 5 in warm weather. He never varied the form of their lessons, but lectured them without pausing while they took notes, or rather, gazed sleepily into space. Harry and Ron had so far managed to scrape passes in the subject only by copying Hermione's notes before exams. She alone seemed able to resist the soporific power of Binns' voice. Harry noticed that Stag had followed him to History of Magic. Remembering that the ninja were here to guard him particularly, he felt a rush of annoyance. Stag did not attempt to talk to him, and he in turn ignored him. After History of Magic came Potions, Harry's least favorite class. Yay. Stag observed in silence as Snape went around and bullied the members of Gryffindor. He had met the Potions teacher a few times at Grimmauld Place, but had only exchanged a few words with him. He really doesn't seem to like Potter-san, he thought. Otter, what is this supposed to be? Snape asked, looking down at Harry's cauldron with a horrible smirk on his face. The Slytherins at the front of the class all looked up eagerly. They loved hearing Snape taunt Harry. "The Draft of Peace," said Harry tensely. "Tell me, Potter," said Snape softly, "can you read?" Draco Malfoy laughed. The guard rolled his eyes. "Yes, I can," said Harry, his fingers clenched tightly around his wand. Stag noticed this motion and sighed silently. "Read the third line of the instructions for me, Potter." Harry squinted at the blackboard. It was not easy to make out the instructions through the haze of multicolored steam now filling the dungeon. Add powdered moonstone, stir 3 times counterclockwise, allow to simmer for 7 minutes, then add 2 drops of syrup of hellebore. "Did you do everything on the third line, Potter?" "No," said Harry very quietly. "I beg your pardon." "No," said Harry, more loudly. "I forgot the hellebore." "I know you did, Potter, which means that this mess is utterly worthless." Evanesco. The contents of Harry's potion vanished. He was left standing foolishly beside an empty cauldron. "Those of you who have managed to read the instructions, fill 1 flagon with a sample of your potion, label it clearly with your name, and bring it up to my desk for testing," said Snape. Homework. 12 inches of parchment on the properties of moonstone and its uses in potion making, to be handed in on Thursday. While everyone around him filled their flagons, Harry cleared away his things, seething. His potion had been no worse than Ron's, which was now giving off a foul odor of bad eggs. Or Neville's, which had achieved the consistency of just mixed cement and which Neville was now having to gouge out of his cauldron. Yet it was he, Harry, who would be receiving 0 marks for the day's work. He stuffed his wand back into his bag and slumped down onto his seat, watching everyone else march up to Snape's desk with filled and corked flagons. When at long last the bell rang, Harry was first out of the dungeon and had already started his lunch by the time Ron and Hermione joined him in the Great Hall. The ceiling had turned an even murkier gray during the morning. Rain was lashing the high windows. "How'd the first few lessons go?" Fox asked, sitting down at the Ravenclaw table. Stag sat down next to him. "Otter-san is not exactly the smartest student here," Stag said. "In History of Magic, he played hangman with Weasley-san, and in potions, well, he's not really good at it." "Any particular reason?" Fox asked. Stag shrugged. "Snape-san doesn't like him," he stated simply. Potter-san's mixture wasn't the worst in the class, yet Snape-san conveniently ignored all the other students' mixtures and only focused on finding flaws in Potter-san's. Although I will admit that he doesn't exactly have any talent in potions either. Snape-san also likes to intimidate the other Gryffindors." Fox shrugged. "Not our problem," he said, "but Potter-san should make an effort to study harder." Stag let out a humorless laugh. "As if you were the star student in the academy," Stag snorted. The Ravenclaws were looking on curiously as the 2 guards exchanged foreign words between them, completely disregarding everything else. The ninja dimly noticed that Harry had gotten pissed at Ron and Hermione and had stormed off, but they ignored him. Divination sucks, Dove thought, staring out the window as she sat in the heat of Professor Trelawney's classroom. Of course, no one looking at her would ever guess that she was almost falling asleep. Dove's back was rigid, her legs tucked under her and her hands resting lightly against her thighs. She was the picture of etiquette. Dove, though sleepy, was still on high alert. Not necessarily on the lookout for intruders, but she kept her ears open. She had found out that Hogwarts students loved to gossip and often listened in on conversations, looking out for tidbits of information that would benefit the ninja in their mission. "You must remember one of them," she heard Harry say impatiently. Dove's ears pricked. Harry's voice sounded annoyed, but underneath that annoyance was a tiny layer of fear. The students were recounting their dreams, and Harry obviously did not want to share his. Dove frowned under her mask. Dumbledore had informed the guards about Harry's connection with Voldemort via his scar, although she wasn't entirely sure how that worked. Dove made a mental note to ask Harry about it later. "This is so boring," Dove complained in her mind. "I would be better off training right now." When the bell went, she followed Ron and Harry to their first defense against a dark arts lesson. Dove had noticed Umbridge during the start of term speech when she had interrupted Dumbledore, and it was there that she learned that the woman would be their teacher. She slipped silently inside the defense against the dark arts classroom and almost recoiled at the sight of Professor Umbridge, who was sitting there looking like some fat toad. Even Naruto's summons look better than her, Dove thought disdainfully, sweeping an eye over Umbridge's fluffy pink cardigan and black velvet bow that sat on her head. "Well, good afternoon," she said when finally the whole class had sat down. Dove had seated herself at the back of the classroom and made a face when she heard Umbridge's sickly sweet voice. A few people mumbled good afternoon in reply. "Tut, tut," said Professor Umbridge. "That won't do, now, will it? I should like you, please, to reply good afternoon, Professor Umbridge one more time, please. Good afternoon, class." "Good afternoon, Professor Umbridge," they chanted back at her. Dove stared at the teacher with distaste. She detested people like Umbridge who put such a huge emphasis on manners. Even Iruka-sensei, who had taught them how to be courteous to their clients when on a mission, didn't care how they answered him in the classroom. Umbridge had ordered the class to put away their wands and take out their quills and parchment. She took out her unusually short wand and tapped the blackboard sharply with it. Defense against the dark arts. A return to basic principles. "Well now, your teaching in this subject has been rather disrupted and fragmented, hasn't it?" stated Professor Umbridge, turning to face the class with her hands clasped neatly in front of her. "The constant changing of teachers, many of whom do not seem to have followed any ministry-approved curriculum, has unfortunately resulted in your being far below the standard we would expect to see at your OWL year. You will be pleased to know, however, that these problems are now to be rectified. We will be following a carefully structured theory-centered ministry-approved course of defensive magic this year. Copy down the following, please." She rapped the blackboard again. The first message vanished and was replaced by the course aims. 1. Understanding the principles underlying defensive magic. 2. Learning to recognize situations in which defensive magic can legally be used. 3. Placing the use of defensive magic in a context for practical use. Dove's respect for Umbridge lessened as the lesson went on. Umbridge was terribly picky about manners and she was extremely dull and boring. She went on about the ministry so much that Dove was sure she was married to it or something. While the students were writing, Umbridge stalked over to the back of the class where Dove was sitting. Dove rolled her eyes as she saw the toad woman draw closer, her lips stretched into a fake smile. "Dear," she said sweetly, but in an undertone as to not draw attention to the two of them. Dove cocked her head to show she was listening. "Please, we do not need a guard for this class. You are free to leave." "My apologies, Umbridge-san," Dove said coldly, "but I have a certain mission. I am staying here until this class is finished." "Perhaps you misunderstand," Umbridge said, coating her voice in even more sugar. "That wasn't a request. I wish for you to leave now." "Perhaps you misunderstand," Dove said, "but you cannot order me around. You are neither my leader nor my client. I do not answer to you." Umbridge pursed her lips, but then forced a sweet smile. "I repeat," Umbridge said, "there is no need for a guard in this class. Please, leave." "I repeat," Dove said, bottling down her annoyance, "I have a mission, which I will complete. You cannot tell me what to do." Umbridge's eyebrow twitched. "I cannot allow you to stay here," she said. "Leave, now. You are disrupting my lesson." Dove gave a humorless laugh. "In what way am I disrupting your lesson?" Dove snorted. "I haven't done anything, have I? Now go back to that desk at the front of the room, or better yet, why don't you go and answer Granger-san's question?" Dove jerked her head over to where Hermione's hand raised in the air. She found this odd, as she knew that Hermione was a major bookworm and loved to read, and also knew that the class had been clearly told to start reading their copy of Defensive Magic Theory. She wondered what made Hermione disregard that order. Umbridge threw Dove a dirty look and went back to her desk, past Hermione and sat down, shuffling through some papers. The bushy-haired girl was being plainly ignored by Umbridge, who seemed to have found something very interesting about the wall to her right. More and more of the class members started to choose to watch Hermione, trying to catch Umbridge's attention instead of reading their books. The teacher could no longer ignore Hermione and finally turned towards the girl, her lips curving up into a false smile. "Did you want to ask something about the chapter, dear?" she asked Hermione, as though she had only just noticed her. "Not about the chapter, no," said Hermione. "Well, we're reading just now," said Professor Umbridge, showing her small pointed teeth. "If you have other queries we can deal with them at the end of class." "I've got a query about your course aims," said Hermione. Professor Umbridge raised her eyebrows while Dove smiled at the girl. She was smart. "And your name is?" "Hermione Granger," said Hermione. "Well, Miss Granger, I think the course aims are perfectly clear if you read them through carefully," said Professor Umbridge. "Well, I don't," said Hermione bluntly. "There's nothing written up there about using defensive spells." "Good," Dove thought, "very good. You've figured it out." "Using defensive spells?" Professor Umbridge repeated with a little laugh. "Why, I can't imagine any situation arising in my classroom that would require you to use a defensive spell, Miss Granger. You surely aren't expecting to be attacked during class." "We're not going to use magic," Ron exclaimed loudly. Dove twitched irritably at the sound of his voice. He just noticed. "Students raise their hands when they wish to speak in my class, Mr. Weasley," said Ron, thrusting his hand into the air. Professor Umbridge, smiling still more widely, turned her back on him. Harry and Hermione immediately raised their hands too. Professor Umbridge's pouchy eyes lingered on Harry for a moment before she addressed Hermione. "Yes, Miss Granger? You wanted to ask something else?" "Yes," said Hermione. "Surely the whole point of defense against the dark arts is to practice defensive spells." "Are you a ministry-trained educational expert, Miss Granger?" asked Professor Umbridge in her falsely sweet voice. "No, but..." "Well then, I'm afraid you are not qualified to decide what the whole point of any class is. Wizards much older and cleverer than you have devised our new program of study. You will be learning about defensive spells in a secure, risk-free way." "Wizards much older and cleverer than you, yeah right," Dove thought, "they are probably also the ones who don't believe Voldemort is back. Besides, it's defense against the dark arts. Defense, goddammit, against the dark arts. What use is that?" said Harry loudly. "If we're going to be attacked, it won't be in a hand, Mr. Potter," sang Professor Umbridge. Harry thrust his fist into the air. Again, Professor Umbridge promptly turned away from him, but now several people had their hands up, too. "And your name is?" Professor Umbridge said to Dean. "Dean Thomas." "Well, Mr. Thomas." "Well, it's like Harry said, isn't it?" said Dean. "If we're going to be attacked, it won't be risk-free." "I repeat," said Professor Umbridge, smiling in a very irritating fashion to Dean, "do you expect to be attacked during my classes?" "No, but..." "This woman just doesn't get it, does she?" Dove thought, annoyed as Umbridge talked over Dean. "I do not wish to criticize the way things have been run in this school, but you have been exposed to some very irresponsible wizards in this class, very irresponsible indeed, not to mention extremely dangerous half-breeds. You say you don't want to criticize, yet that is exactly what you are doing. It's obvious you don't approve of half-breeds," Dove thought. "If you mean Professor Lupin," piped up Dean angrily, "he was the best we ever." "And, Mr. Thomas, as I was saying, you have been introduced to spells that have been complex, inappropriate to your age group and potentially lethal. You have been frightened into believing that you are likely to meet dark attacks every other day." "No we haven't," said Hermione, "we just..." "Your hand is not up, Miss Granger." Dove rubbed her temples, frowning. This was getting more and more unbearable. "It is my understanding that my predecessor not only performed illegal curses in front of you, you actually performed them on you." "Well, he turned out to be a maniac, didn't he?" said Dean hotly. "Mind you, we still learned loads." "Your hand is not up, Mr. Thomas," trilled Umbridge. "Now. It is the view of the ministry that a theoretical knowledge will be more than sufficient to get you through your examination, which, after all, is what school is all about. And your name is?" she added, staring at Parvati, whose hand had just shot up. "Parvati Patil, and isn't there a practical bit in our defense against the dark arts, owl? Aren't we supposed to show that we can actually do the counter curses and things? How are you going to answer that, you old hag?" Dove thought, her lips twitching into a smug smile. "You can't just say that all you have to do is study the theory hard enough and you will. As long as you have studied the theory hard enough, there is no reason why you should not be able to perform the spells under carefully controlled examination conditions," said Professor Umbridge dismissively. Dove almost fell out of her chair. "I can't believe she actually answered her like that," Dove groaned inwardly. That's just like saying that if you stare at a picture of someone throwing a shuriken for long enough, then you will be able to do it perfectly on your first try. Without ever practicing them beforehand," said Parvati incredulously. "Are you telling us that the first time we'll get to do the spells will be during our exam?" "I repeat, as long as you have studied the theory hard enough." "And what good is theory going to be in the real world?" said Harry loudly, his fist in the air again. Dove shot him a glare. "This is school, Mr. Potter, not the real world," Umbridge said softly. "So we're not supposed to be prepared for what's waiting for us out there?" "There is nothing waiting out there, Mr. Potter." "Oh, yeah?" said Harry. Dove bit her lip, willing for him to stop. She could see Harry's temper, bubbling just beneath the surface all day, reach its boiling point. "Who do you imagine wants to attack children like yourselves?" inquired Professor Umbridge in a horribly honeyed voice. "Rapists," Dove thought. "Thieves, muggers, pedophiles, escaped criminals, wild dogs, rogue ninja, there are a lot of things or people who would want to attack you. But please, for the love of God, don't say Voldemort." Let's think," said Harry in a mock thoughtful voice, "maybe Lord Voldemort." Dove sighed. Ron gasped. Lavender Brown uttered a little scream. Neville slipped sideways off his stool. Professor Umbridge, however, did not flinch. She was staring at Harry with a grimly satisfied expression on her face. "10 points from Gryffindor, Mr. Potter." The classroom was still and silent. Everyone was staring at either Umbridge or Harry. "Now, let me make a few things quite plain." Professor Umbridge stood up and leaned towards them, her stubby-fingered hands played on her desk. "You have been told that a certain dark wizard has returned from the dead." "He wasn't dead," said Harry angrily, "but yeah, he returned." "Shut up, you stupid boy," Dove thought, "you have already spoken out of line too many times." "Mr. Potter, you have already lost your house. 10 points do not make matters worse for yourself," said Professor Umbridge in one breath without looking at him. "As I was saying, you have been informed that a certain dark wizard is at large once again. This is a lie." "It is not a lie," said Harry. "I saw him, I fought him." "Attention, Mr. Potter," said Professor Umbridge triumphantly. "Tomorrow evening. 5 o'clock. My office. I repeat, this is a lie. The Ministry of Magic guarantees that you are not in danger from any dark wizard. If you are still worried, by all means come and see me outside class hours. If someone is alarming you with fibs about reborn dark wizards, I would like to hear about it. I am here to help. I am your friend. And now, you will kindly continue your reading. Page 5, Basics for Beginners." Professor Umbridge sat down behind her desk. Harry, however, stood up. Everyone was staring at him. Seamus looked half scared, half fascinated. "All right, this has gone far enough," Dove thought, folding her arms. "I have let Potter-san talk, but now he is just being silly." "So, according to you, Cedric Diggory dropped dead of his own accord, did he?" Harry asked, his voice shaking. "Potter-san," Dove called out sharply. The class jumped, having forgotten that she was also in the room. "Be quiet." Harry turned towards her, his eyes filled with fury. "No, you shut up," Harry said. He turned back to Umbridge, who was looking at the pair of them with a strange, hungry look in her eyes. "Cedric Diggory's death was a tragic accident," Umbridge said coldly. "It was murder," said Harry. He could feel himself shaking. "Voldemort killed him and you know it." "Potter-san," Dove said, still sitting down, her back erect and her eyes glaring out from the holes of her mask. "I told you to shut up. You have spoken out of turn for long enough. The class does not need to hear this." "He died," Harry said shakily, "he died, and now he jabbed a finger at Umbridge, is saying that he died of some stupid accident." "Everyone dies," Dove hissed, suddenly looking very dangerous, "but what right do you have to blurt out facts of Cedric Diggory's death so casually? Now sit down, shut up and read the damn book." Dove said all that quietly, but her voice had a sharp edge to it. Her arms were folded tightly over her chest. "And what right does she have to twist Cedric's death into something accidental?" Harry snarled, jerking his head towards Umbridge. "Come here, Mr. Potter," said a sudden girlish voice. Harry turned to face Umbridge, and she was beckoning to him to come over to her. Harry kicked his chair aside, strode around Ron and Hermione and up to the teacher's desk. He could feel the rest of the class holding its breath. He felt so angry he did not care what happened next. "And you too, Miss Dove." Dove stood up and walked towards Umbridge with a strange, almost feline grace. Professor Umbridge pulled a small roll of pink parchment out of her handbag, stretched it out on the desk, dipped her quill into a bottle of ink and started scribbling, hunched over, so that Harry or Dove could see what she was writing. Nobody spoke. After a minute or so she rolled up the parchment and tapped it with her wand. It sealed itself seamlessly so that no one could tear it open. "Take this to Professor McGonagall, dear," said Professor Umbridge, holding out the note to Harry. He took it from her without saying a word, turned on his heel and left the room, not even looking back towards anyone. Dove followed him without hesitation and closed the door quietly behind her. "What the hell do you want?" Harry asked savagely as he noticed Dove behind him. "The one guarding you has to follow you," Dove said icily. "Listen to me, Potter-san. You have to learn to control your temper or it will make your life hard, not only for yourself, but for us too. When you have detention, did you know that one of us has to waste his or her time to follow you to the old hag's office? Does it look like I care?" Harry snapped, still walking very fast. "Obviously not, you idiot." Harry ignored her. They arrived at McGonagall's office and Harry rapped sharply on the door. It flew open to reveal the Transfiguration teacher, looking grim and harassed. "Otter," she said, ignoring Dove. "Why aren't you in class?" "I've been sent to see you," said Harry stiffly. "Sent? What do you mean sent?" He held out the note from Professor Umbridge. Professor McGonagall took it from him, frowning, slid it open with a tap of her wand, stretched it out and began to read. Her eyes zoomed from side to side behind their square spectacles as she read what Umbridge had written, and with each line they became narrower. "Come in here, Potter, Dove." They followed her inside her study. The door closed automatically behind them. "Well," said Professor McGonagall. "Is this true?" "Is what true?" Harry asked rather more aggressively than he intended. "Professor," he added in an attempt to sound more polite. "Is it true that you shouted at Professor Umbridge?" "Yes," said Harry. "You called her a liar?" "Yes." "You told her he who must not be named is back?" "Yes." Professor McGonagall sat down behind her desk, watching Harry closely. Then she said, "Have a biscuit, Potter." "Have what?" "Have a biscuit," she repeated impatiently, indicating a tartan tin lying on top of one of the piles of papers on her desk. "And sit down." She offered a biscuit to Dove as well, who declined. Professor McGonagall set down Umbridge's note and looked very seriously at Harry. "Otter, you need to be careful." Harry swallowed his mouthful of ginger newt and stared at her. Her tone of voice was not at all what he was used to. It was not brisk, crisp and stern. It was low and anxious and somehow much more human than usual. "This behavior in Dolores Umbridge's class could cost you much more than house points and a detention. What do you?" "Otter, use your common sense," snapped Professor McGonagall, with an abrupt return to her usual manner. "You know where she comes from, you must know to whom she is reporting. And that goes for you guards as well." Dove stared coldly at her. The bell rang for the end of the lesson. Overhead and all around came the elephantine sounds of hundreds of students on the move. "It says here she's given you detention every evening this week, starting tomorrow," Professor McGonagall said, looking down at Umbridge's note again. "That includes Dove as well. She says that you disrupted her class." Dove raised an invisible eyebrow, but otherwise remained silent. "Every evening this week," repeated Harry, horrified. "But, Professor, couldn't you?" "No, I couldn't," said Professor McGonagall flatly. "But. She is your teacher and has every right to give you detention. You will go to her room at 5 o'clock tomorrow for the first one. Just remember. Tread carefully around Dolores Umbridge." "But I was telling the truth," said Harry, outraged. "Sometimes, telling the truth will get you nowhere," Dove said quietly. "Dove is quite right," she said. "And this isn't about telling the truth or not. This is about keeping your head down and your temper in check." She stood up and pointed him and Dove out of her office. "Have a good day," she said. Chapter 4. The Blood Quill. "You what?" Fox hissed dangerously. "I have got detention with Umbridge and every night this week," Dove repeated calmly, oblivious to the anger radiating off her captain. "Why?" Fox snarled. "Because apparently I disrupted her class." "And why the hell did you disrupt her class?" "Because Potter-san was letting his mouth run away from him," Dove said. They were in the Great Hall, sitting at the Slytherin table. Fox's voice was slowly rising and the students were starting to listen in with interest. "That's not a good enough reason," Fox growled. He was so pissed he couldn't even enjoy his food properly. The poor plate of steak lay forgotten as the captain glared at his teammate. Then, Fox sighed and all his anger seemed to float away. "You don't even have to go," he said. "I know that," Dove said. "But I just thought I should tell you." "Dove, you will not be going to her detentions," Fox said. "But I want you to participate in only one, the one tomorrow night. The rest you don't have to go to. I want to see what she does to you." "Yes, Captain," Dove said tonelessly. Harry stared the guards as he tried to eat his dinner in peace. News of Harry's shouting match with Umbridge had traveled through the castle quite fast, even for Hogwarts standards. He set his knife and fork down, they were shaking too much for him to hold them steady, and he, Hermione and Ron left the Great Hall in an attempt to escape the whispers. "Okay then," Fox said, resorting back to his collected ANBU demeanor. "If this happens again, I will send you straight back to Konoha, understand?" "Hi," Dove said softly, not bothering to explain that she didn't really do anything wrong in the first place. "This is heavy rain," Wolf said, watching the droplets splatter the windows. "Do you guys still want to train?" The others nodded. They stood up and body flickered out of the hall, leaving a large space at the Slytherin table. The shinobi appeared outside in the pouring rain, getting soaked instantly. They traveled at high speed to the Forbidden Forest, where the giant trees gave them a little shelter from the wetness. It was dark, but the ninja were used to fighting in such conditions, and they started sparring immediately. It was an every man for himself game, one that could last for hours, even days. 2 hours into the game, Fox felled a tree with his Rasengan. The ninja knew that was the signal to stop and they halted, listening to the tree crash down to the ground. "Are you serious?" Dragon shouted over the sound of rain. "Can't we go on?" "Yeah, I want to train more," Wolf said. Akamaru stood panting beside his master, but barked in agreement. "No. We gotta head back now," Fox said. The ninja sighed but followed their captain. Raccoon was a little relieved. He didn't like rain or any type of water in masses. It made his sand armor melt away and he couldn't use any of his sand techniques. He had had to fight with his katana, kunai and shuriken. "Why so early, Captain?" Slug asked, brushing aside her sopping pink hair. "Guard duty," Fox said shortly. They entered the entrance hall, where they saw Professor Snape passing by. He took in their dirty, mud-stained clothes and dripping armor and curled his lip. "Make sure you don't filthy the castle," he said before walking away. The shinobi ignored him and body flickered up to the respective common rooms in which they were staying. The ninja all had their own small closet and bathroom in each of the 4 houses' common room. None of them had any rooms, so they changed in the bathroom, kept their things in the closet, and slept out in the common room. Raccoon and Hawk were currently walking up the stairs of the Slytherin common room towards their private, albeit small, bathroom before they were encountered by the notorious Draco Malfoy. The Slytherin boy looked at them in disgust before smirking. Well, Malfoy said. Crabbe and Goyle appeared behind him. "What's happened to you?" Hawk gave the blonde his signature Hyuga glare. "Move aside," Hawk said coldly. "I don't want to hear your foolishness tonight." He and Raccoon swept past the trio and went up to their bathroom. Raccoon waited outside while Hawk used the shower inside. After making sure the door was locked, Hawk removed his mask, sighing as he did so. "That Malfoy boy is and will be troublesome," Raccoon said, striking up a conversation to seemingly nobody. Niji, however, heard him clearly, even though there was a door in the way. "Obviously," Niji said, his voice echoing off the tiles of the bathroom. "It's because his father is an important figure in the ministry. Malfoy thinks that he has a lot of power." Raccoon slipped a hand under his mask and felt the mud that was slowly drying on his face. He went to the closet that was right beside the door of the bathroom, took the key out, unlocked the closet door, and gathered up his spare bag of ANBU clothes. He only had 2 sets. "Hurry up," Raccoon said. "My clothes feel disgusting. I want a shower." "We pretty much had a shower out there," Niji replied. Raccoon glanced out the window where rain was lashing furiously and agreed. Slug, dressed and clean, sat down in one of the comfy armchair in front of the fire. Dragon, who had also showered, sat next to her. There was silence between the 2 girls, but neither of them tried to break it. They were comfortable in each other's company. The only sounds were the Ravenclaw's murmurs around the pair and the scratching of quills. "Who's taking tonight's shift?" Dragon asked. "Dove and Cat," Slug said. "Have you set up the traps outside the Ravenclaw common room?" "Yeah," Dragon said. "The Ravenclaws are very quiet, aren't they?" "Very studious," Slug agreed. She looked at the window. "What a storm," Dragon sighed. "Hogwarts weather isn't very nice, is it?" "That's because you're used to the sunny days of Konoha," Slug said. To anyone else, the conversation would have appeared to be brisk and short, but the 2 girls were close friends and they could see underneath the layer of coolness that enveloped the talk between them. "What time is it?" Dragon asked. 8:40. "No one should be outside now," Slug said. "The curfew is 8:45. "Should we go check?" Dragon asked. Slug shook her head. "No, if any Ravenclaw student is found, Dove and Cat will take them here," Slug said. "True," Dragon said. "How's Hawk?" Slug asked suddenly. Dragon glanced at her friend. "He's fine, why do you ask?" Dragon said. Slug shrugged. "He was injured on his last mission," Slug said. "That shoulder wound he had should be healed, but I was worried he might have some problems with it." "Oh, that," Dragon recalled. "I think he said that his shoulder was perfectly fine." "Okay, that's good," Slug said. She stared into the glowing depths of the fire, deep in thought. Dragon said. "That day when we were escorting Potter sent to the Hogwarts Express." "What about it?" Slug questioned. "Well, there was a racket. Something about this man called Sturgis Podmore. He was supposed to be at Grimmauld Place that day, but he didn't show up," Dragon said. "I wonder why." "You think it's important?" Slug asked curiously. "Could be," the bun-headed girl said quietly. "I don't know." Moody-san was very harassed. "We'll look into it later," Slug said. "Yeah." Is there anything out of place? No. Everything's fine. Sure. Would I lie to you? Of course not. Kat scanned the hallways with her Byakugan, but then deactivated it when she saw that nothing was out of place. Dove jerked her head and Kat nodded. The two slipped in silence down a staircase and onto the floor below them. It was the same process, over and over again. Check the floor, go down the staircase to another floor, check it again, and they repeated it until all of Hogwarts Castle had been ensured safe. No students are out, Kat said. That's good, Dove said. Are there any strange energies or chakra? Kat shook her head. Nothing, Kat replied. Tonight's going to be boring, Dove said, so annoying. It's our mission, Kat pointed out. I know, Dove said. But it doesn't mean it's fun. Dove, Kat said, have we got anything from Hokage-sama about the Akatsuki? Dove glanced at her, startled for a second, not expecting the sudden change of topic. I don't know, Dove said, brushing her long fringe out of her eyes. Go and ask Fox. He's the captain and he's the one who gets all the letters from Konoha. Yeah, Kat said quietly. She sighed, her shoulders slumping. I'm really worried. What about? Dove asked, cocking her head, the Akatsuki. Yeah, Kat said. They're really dangerous. We lost many good shinobi to them in the 4th Shinobi World War. Even Asuma-sensei died because of them as well. And now they're looking for Fox. Yeah, Dove said quietly. No tears came now when she thought about her old teacher. She knew that he wouldn't approve of her crying over him when he had already been gone for so long. However, the sadness in her heart could never be erased, and she knew that it would be there for the rest of her life. Dove, there's a student near the library, Kat said, nudging her arm. Let's go, Dove said. The pair body flickered up to where the student was. He was a third-year Hufflepuff, and he clearly looked extremely spooked out when he saw the ninja seemingly appear out of nowhere. The two escorted him back to the Hufflepuff common room and, after they had made sure he was inside, resumed guarding the hallways. How's the report going on? Stag asked, bending over to look at what Fox was writing. Almost finished, Fox replied. He dipped his brush into the ink and began writing once more. Akamaru, who was being petted by the first-year girls, was trying in vain to get away from them. Wilf had his hands on the windowsill and was staring out into the rain, seemingly oblivious to what was happening to his dog. It was very loud in Gryffindor Tower. Fred and George Weasley were using first-years as test subjects for their new sweets, which they had called skiving snack boxes. Do you think they really should be doing that? Stag asked softly, looking at the first-years all slumped down on the floor. Fox glanced up at them and then resumed his work. As long as they don't kill them, Fox mumbled. A few of the Gryffindors were laughing. Hermione, however, looking furious, and she squared her shoulders and marched up to the twins. That's enough. Hermione said forcefully to Fred and George, both of whom looked up in mild surprise. Yeah, you're right, said George, nodding. This dosage looks strong enough, doesn't it? You can't test your rubbish on students. We're paying them, said Fred indignantly. I don't care, it could be dangerous. Rubbish, said Fred. Calm down, Hermione, they're fine, said Lee reassuringly as he walked from first year to first year, inserting purple sweets into their open mouths. Yeah, look, they're coming round now, said George. A few of the first years were indeed stirring. Several looked shocked to find themselves lying on the floor or dangling off their chairs, and it was apparent that Fred and George had not warned them what the sweets were going to do. Feel alright? Said George kindly to a small dark-haired girl lying at his feet. I think so, she said shakily. Excellent, said Fred happily, but the next second Hermione had snatched both his clipboard and the paper bag of fainting fancies from his hands. It is not excellent. Course it is, they're alive, aren't they? Said Fred angrily. You can't do this, what if you made one of them really ill? We're not going to make them ill, we've already tested them all on ourselves, this is just to see if everyone reacts the same. As Hermione and the twins continued arguing, Fox was clutching the brush harder and harder in his hand. He was starting to get kinda pissed off. But before he exploded, he caught himself. They're only kids, Fox thought. I'm an ANBU. I shouldn't let my emotions control me. Great, now I sound like Psy. Fox's hidden eyebrows twitched as he turned slowly to glare at the source of all the commotion. Stag sighed and slapped his forehead. Troublesome, Stag muttered, so troublesome. Do you think you could get those three to shut up? Wilf asked irritably, jerking his head towards Hermione, Fred and George. Shut up, Fox said. His low, cold voice cut through all the noise, and as he desired, silence fell as the students looked at him fearfully, as though he might rip their heads off or something if they made another sound. Fox swept his infinite blue eyes over everyone before turning back to the scroll on his lap. Slowly, the noise level grew again, though it wasn't as loud as before, and Wilf noticed Harry go up to the dorms. Wilf narrowed his already slitted eyes when he saw Harry rubbing his right temple, as though he was in pain. The next day was raining as well. Rain, 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 rain. There was too much rain. Kat was getting a little sick of it. She wanted some sunshine. But she wasn't the type of person to complain, and so she kept her mouth shut. Her eyes wandered over the ceiling of the Great Hall as she sat at the Hufflepuff table for breakfast. The owl delivery on the first morning had alarmed her, and she had pinned and almost killed a few of the birds with flying shuriken until she learned that it was something of a common occurrence in the wizarding world. A cool breeze swept through the open doors, rustling her long blue-black hair. There was a slight pressure next to her, indicating that Dragon had sat down. "Good morning," Dragon said. "And to you," Kat murmured. "What have you got on today?" The weapons mistress sighed and rested her chin on her palm. "I'm guarding the east side of the castle," she grumbled. "Not like there's anything there, anyway." "I've got west side," Hawk said. He had appeared behind Kat and he nodded to the two of them in greeting. He held a scroll in one hand and he held it out to Kat. "This is for you." Curious, Kat took it and immediately found that it was sealed. "Aye," she said softly. The mark disappeared from the scroll and she unfurled it. "It's from Father." Startled, Hawk stared at Kat with puzzled eyes. "Pat. I apologize for sending this while you are on a mission, but I thought you should know. Anabi is sick. We don't know what's wrong with her. She seems to have some type of fever, but no medicine can subdue it. She had been admitted into Konoha Hospital. Her condition is worsening by the day." Hyuga Hiashi. Pat finished reading the scroll, and after she had done so she rolled it back up again. Her lips tightened, her fists balled. "What's wrong?" Hawk asked, sensing her distress. "Anabi is sick," Kat said, staring blankly at him, "and they don't know what's wrong with her." Dragon laid a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry," Dragon said. "She'll be fine. I met your sister, remember? She's a strong girl." "Yeah," Kat said, not really convinced. Dragon sighed and changed tack. "Idiot," she said softly, "there's no use worrying about Hanabi while you're on this mission. There's nothing you can do to help her, just believe in Hanabi and hope that she'll recover." Dragon ruffled Kat's hair affectionately. Kat gave her a little smile. "Raccoon, you're with Potter-san today," Fox said, ghosting up to them. The students walking past all shied away from the ANBU captain. "Hi," Raccoon said. He stood up from where he was sitting at the table and went off to find Harry. The redhead walked through the corridors, filled with students hurrying to their respective classes. They were obviously late. Raccoon found Harry in the charms room and Professor Flitwick had been lecturing the class on the owls just as Raccoon slipped in. No one noticed him. Raccoon watched with idle interest as the students began revising the summoning charms and the teacher rounded off the lesson by giving the class a pile of homework. In Transfiguration, Professor McGonagall made them practice the vanishing spell, which, judging from the frowns and moans from the class, was horribly difficult. At the end of the lesson, it seemed, only Hermione was able to successfully vanish her snail. Raccoon noted the way Harry was rubbing his head as though he had a headache. "I might be overthinking this. It might just be a normal headache," Raccoon thought as he walked down to care of magical creatures behind the trio, but better safe than sorry. Dumbledore-san did say that Potter-san had a connection with Voldemort via his scar. "Is your head hurting, Potter-san?" Raccoon murmured into Harry's ear. Harry yelped and twisted around, coming face to face with Raccoon's mask. The guard stood there feeling a little surprised about Harry's reaction. He thought Harry had hurt him when he had come up behind him. "Don't do that," Harry said angrily. Raccoon didn't bother to apologize. Hermione and Ron had stopped in their tracks, looking behind at Harry, who had turned to face the ninja. "Well, is it?" Raccoon prompted. "What is?" Harry said. He was unconsciously rubbing his head. "Is your scar hurting?" Raccoon asked. "No," Harry snapped, very forcefully. "I'm fine, thanks." Raccoon sighed and ran a hand through his red hair. "If you say so," Raccoon muttered. He knew the boy was lying, but he didn't want to push Harry any further. He was already pissed. Information could wait. The teacher, Professor Grubbly Plank, proceeded to show the class bowtruckles. While the class urged forward to take a bowtruckle and sketch it, Raccoon noticed Harry edge around the side and go up to Professor Grubbly Plank. "Where's Hagrid?" Raccoon heard Harry ask. "Never you mind," said Professor Grubbly Plank. Raccoon knew, of course, that Hagrid was away on a mission to look and recruit giants. But he didn't tell Harry that. He saw Malfoy whisper something to Harry, to which Harry promptly whispered back. Both looked disgusted at the sight of each other. As Malfoy walked away, Raccoon glimpsed a fleeting look of worry pass over Harry's face. "Don't worry about Hagrid-san," Raccoon said to Harry as the boy headed towards where Ron and Hermione sat. "What would you know?" Harry asked icily. His anxious demeanor was lost as the guard spoke to him. Raccoon ignored the scarred boy and turned away. Raccoon studied the Forbidden Forest with calculating eyes. He liked the look of it. It was interesting, but it didn't seem as dangerous as the Forest of Death back in the ninja world. He wanted to explore around, but his duty to Harry tied him here. He was jolted out of his thoughts as Harry's resounding yell echoed around. Ouch. Raccoon started and whipped around, a kunai in his hand, the familiar smell of blood filling his nose. He relaxed when he saw there was no danger, and it was only because a Bowtruckle had given Harry a swipe with his sharp fingers. It left 2 deep cuts on his hand. When the bell echoed distantly over the grounds, Harry rolled up his blood-stained parchment and marched off to herbology with his hand wrapped in Hermione's handkerchief, Malfoy's jibes, insults and laughter ringing in his ears. If Malfoy calls Hagrid a moron one more time, said Harry through gritted teeth. Harry, don't go picking a fight with Malfoy. Don't forget, he's a prefect now, he could make life difficult for you, Hermione said. Wow, I wonder what it'd be like to have a difficult life, said Harry sarcastically. Ron laughed. Behind him, Raccoon stiffened but did not say anything. Oh yes, how he would wonder. When the door of the nearest greenhouse opened up, some 4th years spilled out. Fox trailed after them and when he spotted Raccoon, hurried over to him. Is everything alright? Fox asked in a low voice. Raccoon nodded. I have some stuff to tell you, but not now, Raccoon said. Okay, Fox nodded. He glanced at the greenhouse behind him. Raccoon, try not to go inside that greenhouse, it stinks. Before Raccoon could question why, Fox had already body flickered back to the group of 4th years. Hi, said Ginny brightly as she walked by Harry, Ron and Hermione. She hesitated when she saw Raccoon, but in the end she gave him a tentative smile. A few seconds later, Luna Lovegood emerged. Raccoon recognized her as a same strange hairy girl from the train. Luna spotted Harry and made a straight beeline for him. I believe he who must not be named is back and I believe you fraud him and escaped from him, Luna said in one breath when she reached him, without so much as a preliminary hello. Right, said Harry, thoroughly taken aback. As Luna walked away, Ernie Macmillan stepped up towards Harry as well. I want you to know, Potter, he said in a loud carrying voice, that it's not only weirdos who support you. My family have always stood firm behind Dumbledore, and so do I. Thanks very much, Ernie, said Harry, surprised but very pleased. Raccoon observed the scene with his hands folded. It was apparent that Dumbledore held a lot of power, but none of the ninja were sure how much. Was Dumbledore this influential? What is that smell? Raccoon asked, choking slightly. Hermione glanced behind her, pursed her lips, but answered him all the same. That's dragon dung, Hermione told him. It's Professor Sprout's preferred type of fertilizer. Raccoon resisted the urge to put a hand under his mask and over his nose. The smell was overpowering, especially for a ninja's trained senses. Fox was right. It does stink, Raccoon thought. He winced when he thought of the long lesson ahead of him in the greenhouse. Professor Sprout, like the other teachers Raccoon had witnessed, started off the lesson by lecturing the class on their owls. She, like her colleagues, ignored Raccoon, who hovered around behind the students. Just bear with it, Raccoon chanted in his head. Just bear with the smell. You'll be out of this stinking greenhouse soon. Just bear with it. An hour and a half later, when the bell rang, Raccoon body flickered outside to where the blessed air was, not waiting for the students to go out first. Out of the corner of his eye, Raccoon noticed a fat toad hopping towards him. It had bright yellow skin and blue polka dots all over. It had a purple bandana wrapped around its neck with the Konoha symbol stitched onto it. Raccoon recognized it as one of Fox's summons. Raccoon-san, the toad said happily, bounding over to him. Hello, Raccoon said quietly. The Gryffindors all gasped and pointed at the toad when it talked, but Raccoon ignored them. What is it? 2 things. 1. Take the Potter boy straight to the Great Hall and swap over with Dove, cause she has a detention with him, the toad said. Raccoon raised an invisible eyebrow at the Dove part but did not comment. 2. There's a meeting tonight at 10 o'clock in the Gryffindor common room. You know the password. Hi, Raccoon said. Is that all? Yup, said the toad. Alright, thank you for the information, Raccoon said politely. The toad bowed, saluted cheerfully and hopped back off the castle. It was pink. It was so pink Harry almost gagged as he stepped his way towards Umbridge's desk. There were pink lacy covers draped on all the surfaces. There were several pink vases full of dried pink flowers, each resting on its own pink doily. On the wall was a large collection of pink ornamental plates, each decorated with a large Technicolor kitten wearing a different ribbon around its neck. The carpet was pink, the walls were pink, heck, the only thing not pink was the door. Good evening, Mr. Potter, said a soft, sugary voice. Harry started and glanced around. He had not noticed Umbridge at first because she was wearing a set of luridly flowered robes that merged only too well with the pink tablecloth on the desk behind her. Umbridge gave Harry a sickening little smile, ignoring the guard that stood behind him, who was quite overwhelmed with the pinkness of the room. Good evening, Professor Umbridge, said Harry stiffly. Well, sit down, she said, pointing towards a small table draped in lace, beside which she had drawn up 2 straight-back chairs. Dove went over to the table and sat, her footsteps making no noise on the thick pink carpet. 2 pieces of blank parchment lay on the table, apparently waiting for them. "You will be writing lines for me," Umbridge said with a sweet smile. "Mr. Potter, you will be writing 'I must not tell lies,' Miss Dove, you will be writing 'I will not disrupt a class.'" Umbridge handed the 2 of them long black quills with an unusually sharp tip. "Umbridge and," Dove's voice blended in with the quiet. Umbridge cocked her head. "I will only be participating in this detention. I will not be doing any more. This was an order from my captain, and I listen only to him. You have no authority over me." Umbridge stared at her with eyes filled with poison, recognizing that what Dove said was true. Then, she smiled again. "Very well," she said. "Now, please start. And I want you to write the lines in English, not Japanese." Professor," Harry said, "you haven't given us any ink." "Oh, you won't need any ink," said Umbridge, turning to him with a tiny laugh. Dove was looking at the quill curiously. She wasn't exactly sure how to use it, was she supposed to hold it like a brush? Finally, she looked over at Harry and tried to mimic what he was doing. "I must not tell lies." Harry gasped in pain when he wrote those words. The words had appeared on the parchment in what appeared to be shining red ink. At the same time, the words had appeared on the back of Harry's right hand, cut into his skin as though traced there by a scalpel, yet even as he stared at the shining cut, the skin healed over again, leaving the place where it had been slightly redder than before, but quite smooth. He glanced over at Dove and almost gasped again. Her whole piece of parchment was filled with the tiny, shining red words of "I must not disrupt a class." Over and over again. She had almost reached the bottom of the page, her hand sprinting across the parchment. The cut hadn't had time to heal because she was writing too fast. Drops of blood were soaked across the page. Blood was such a common smell to Dove that she almost didn't notice it. Only when she had finished did she realize that her hand was stinging slightly. "Oh," she whispered in surprise. Umbridge and Harry looked over at her. She raised her right hand up, staring at it, and said in wonder, "I'm bleeding. When did this get here?" She didn't notice the shocked expressions on their faces or the way their mouths dropped open. She then glanced at the parchment, then at the words engraved on the back of her hand. Her eyes hardened. "Why am I writing in my own blood?" she asked, her voice cold. "Is this some kind of torture device?" That question was directed at Umbridge. "No, no," Umbridge said sweetly, getting over her shock, "it's just a special quill of mine." "I have no paper," Dove said bluntly. Umbridge swallowed and said, "Give me your hand." Unwillingly, Dove stretched her arm out and Umbridge grasped it, inspecting the words closely. "You may go," Umbridge said. Dove withdrew her hand but stayed in her seat. "I wait here until Pottersan's finished," she said quietly. Rivers of blood oozed from the wound, but Dove ignored it. A few hours later, Umbridge dismissed Harry as well. Dove went to his common room with him, seeing that she had a meeting there as well. It was around 9:30, but all the ANBU were sitting around the fire in the Gryffindor common room. Harry looked at the quiet masked figures that looked oddly impressive for a second before going up to his dormitory. "I smell blood," Raccoon said. "What happened to your hand?" Slug asked, standing up and walking over to Dove. "Umbridge-san," Dove said. "She has this strange quill that makes you write in your own blood and whatever you're writing gets cut into the back of your hand." Hawks, who was staring at Dove's wound with an angry look in his eye, uttered a disgusted sound. "We're ANBU, so we're used to torture," Fox said. "But to civilians, such as these wizards, who are not used to physical pain, that quill you are talking about is an equipment of torture. It's not an extreme class of torture. It's on a rather low level, but it's torture nonetheless." "I doubt that woman's allowed that kind of thing," Hawk said. There were a few 7th-year Gryffindors still in the common room and they exchanged dissatisfied looks once they realized that the ninja were speaking in Japanese and they could not understand what was going on. "Should we report her to Dumbledore-san?" Dragon asked. Fox considered that for a few minutes. "I think," he said slowly, "not." "What? Why?" Slug asked, staring at her captain in surprise. Fox was silent. "I think Dumbledore-san already knows," Fox said finally. "Plus, she's harming our charge. We can no longer ignore her. We'll deal with her ourselves." "Hi, Captain," the others intoned. "Is there anything else to report?" Fox asked. "I noticed the Potter-san keeps rubbing his head as though it hurts," Raccoon said. "I saw that too," Wolf nodded. "Do you think it has anything to do with his scar?" Cat asked. "Remember what Dumbledore-san told us about the connection?" "Could be," Fox said. "We'll ask him tomorrow." "Am I going to Potter-san to his detention tomorrow too?" Dove asked. "Hawk can go," Fox decided, "alright. You're all dismissed. Stag, you come with me and guard the castle tonight." All the guards got up silently to leave before a clicking sound at the window alerted them to something. Fox looked over, a kunai in his hand, and saw Hawk. It was staring at him with large amber eyes, a large scroll tied to its legs. "That's from Konoha," Fox said and hurried over to open the window. "What does it say?" Dove asked. Fox untied the scroll, released the seal and unrolled it. The others waited anxiously behind him. They all felt tension emit from their captain, and the worry intensified. Finally, Fox looked up. "They can't find Kissam," Fox said, all trace of warmth gone from his voice. It was empty. "Kissam is gone, and Tsunade Bachan thinks that he's gone to the wizarding world. I don't know how or why, but it seems as though he's gotten in contact with Voldemort." Chapter 5. Trained in combat. Harry was followed to all his detentions by one ninja guard. Nothing was said at all during the evenings by Umbridge, Harry or any of the shinobi. At the end of his Thursday detention, however, the message "I must not tell lies" had stopped fading from Harry's hand and now it oozed droplets of blood. Raccoon, who was the one guarding him that night, took Harry all the way to Gryffindor Tower, but instead of leaving him in front of the portrait hole as he usually did, Raccoon entered as well. Fox, Stag and Wolf were all sitting in front of the fire in the armchairs, but strangely, Slug was also there. Harry had never seen her inside the Gryffindor common room before and he heard that Slug stayed with the Ravenclaws. The firelight illuminated her mask, reflecting her unfeeling eyes. Fox, Wolf and Stag stayed silent, observing him, though Fox had shifted when he smelled the blood. "Come here," Slug said, not even bothering to greet him. Harry edged forward nervously. "Give me your hand." Harry hesitated. Slug sighed impatiently. "I'm not going to kill you," she said irritably. Harry gave her his hand. Slug held it up so she could see it better. Her hand felt calloused. The result of spending many years wielding kunai and shuriken. "What are you going to do?" Harry asked. His eyelids were drooping slightly. Umbridge's detentions left him little time to do his homework and sleep. Slug didn't answer, but she held her free hand over the cut. Harry gasped when her palm began glowing and the skin on Harry's hand began to mend itself. In no time, it was healed, but there was still a faint scar there. The scar that bore the words "I must not tell lies." Harry inspected it closely and when he looked up again, Slug had disappeared. He glanced around and noticed that Raccoon was also gone. "They have their shifts tonight," Fox said as a way of explanation. "Now go to bed." Harry obeyed without question. He noticed that Fox's voice sounded vaguely tired, as though he had not gone to sleep for many nights. As Harry went up to his dorm, the common room door opened and a white cat leapt in gracefully. It had the Konoha headband around its neck. Fox instantly recognized it as one of Cat Summon's. "Good evening," Fox greeted the feline. Wolf sat up straighter. Akamaru sniffed the cat but left it alone. Stag did not move a muscle. He appeared to be sleeping, but Fox knew better. He was really wide awake. "My name is Michiru," the cat said, "I have a report from Cat-sama." "Continue." "Weasley-san has been leaving the Tower of Gryffindor every night since Tuesday," Michiru said. Fox nodded. "I'm aware of that fact," Fox said. Michiru inclined her head. "The reason is that he is practicing the sport that wizards find enjoyable," Michiru said. "Quidditch, I believe it is called. He is leaving Gryffindor Tower to play Quidditch." Wolf repeated. "We let him go out because we wanted to see what he was up to with a guard tailing him," Stag mumbled lazily, joining in on the conversation, "but it turns out he was only playing that wizard sport. Troublesome." "If that's the case, then tell Cat to bring him back," Fox commanded. "I'm going to have a little chat with Weasley-san." "Hi," Michiru said. She bounded out, flicking her white tail. "Cat summons are so well behaved," Wolf commented. "Remember that tabby cat? I think its name was Yusuke." "That one was annoying," Fox said. "He kept on asking me if I wanted a bowl of milk or a blanket to cover myself with. Or if I wanted some roasted mice," Wolf recalled with a shudder. "He was overly polite. It's like he was a servant or something." 10 minutes later, the common room door opened again. This time, Ron's sullen face came into view, along with the mask of Cat. The Kunoichi nodded at Fox and left, vanishing in a wisp of smoke. "Weasley-san," Fox said sternly, his voice flat. Ron winced, knowing he was in trouble. "What time do you think it is?" 10 o'clock, Ron mumbled. His ears had started to go red. "What's the curfew?" Wolf asked icily. 8:45. "We do not make exceptions. How long has this been going on?" The guards knew, of course, that Ron had only been out for a few days, but that didn't stop them from asking him. It was strangely funny to watch him squirm. "Since Tuesday," Ron said, his voice barely a whisper. "You're lucky we caught you when we did. What if something happened to you out there?" Stag asked, nodding his head towards the window. This was also a lie. They had known from the beginning and had set Cat to follow him stealthily. "I'm sorry. It won't happen again," Ron said. His entire face was now red. "You betcha it won't," Fox said. "If this happens again, it's going to be a Saturday detention for you." Ron nodded and Fox jerked his head to the dorms, signaling that he was free to leave. Ron was glad to do so. Once Ron was upstairs, Fox ghosted up the stairs and paused outside Harry's and Ron's dorm. He heard the two talking quietly. Harry was questioning Ron why he was out so late, and Ron revealed that he had been practicing Quidditch with the hope of becoming Gryffindor's new keeper. Friday dawned as gloomy and sodden as the rest of the week. Nothing of major importance happened that day, apart from the fact that this was to be Harry's last detention with Umbridge. Friday was also the day of the new keeper tryouts for the Gryffindor Quidditch team. This time, it was Dragon who accompanied him to Umbridge's office. Harry was disappointed that he couldn't see Ron trying out, but consoled himself by thinking that after this detention, he would be free. At 5 o'clock that evening he knocked on Umbridge's door and was told to enter. Harry could feel discomfort radiating from Dragon, who seemed to think that there was a little too much pink for this office. The blank piece of parchment lay waiting for Harry at the lace-covered table, with a long black blood quill next to it. "You know what to do, Mr. Potter," said Umbridge, smiling sweetly at him. She paid no attention to Dragon, who stood erect behind Harry, and she stayed that way for the rest of the night. "I must not tell lies. I must not tell lies. I must not tell lies." The cut on his hand, which had been healed by Slug the night before, reopened again. Dragon stared at it, not moving, not making a sound, but anger was evident in the way she held herself. The Quidditch players outside zoomed around the air. Harry chanced to look at them now and then. Some of the hopeful keepers were extremely bad, but at this distance, Harry could not make out which one was Ron. "I must not tell lies." Night had fallen, and Harry's hand was searing with pain. The Quidditch pitch was no longer visible. "Let's see if you've got the message yet, shall we?" said Umbridge's soft voice half an hour later. She moved towards him, stretching out her short ringed fingers for his arm. And then, as she took hold of him to examine the words now cut into his skin, pain seared, not across the back of his hand, but across the scar on his forehead. At the same time, he had a most peculiar sensation somewhere around his midriff. Slap. Umbridge withdrew her hand from shock, nursing it gently, as a pink mark slowly started to appear on the skin. She glared furiously at Dragon, who had appeared between Harry and Umbridge. Harry, too, was surprised. "You're hurting him," Dragon said softly. She had seen pain flash across Harry's face and recognized it as unusual. Since it had happened at exactly the same time Umbridge had touched Harry, she had assumed that the teacher was to blame. Quickly, though, Umbridge regained her composure. "Well, I think I've made my point, Mr. Potter. You may go." He did not answer. Harry's heart was thumping very hard and fast. Was she talking about his hand or did she know what he had just felt in his forehead? He caught up his school bag and left the room as quickly as he could, Dragon shadowing him. "Stay calm," he told himself as he sprinted up the stairs. "Stay calm, it doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means." "Ottersand," Dragon said quietly, in front of the Gryffindor common room. "Did your scar hurt?" Harry turned slowly to face her. "No," he said bluntly. "It's fine. She just pressed on the cut a little too hard." Dragon stared at him silently, to the point where he started to feel uncomfortable. "You're sweating," she noted. "You're shaking, your face is white, and your heartbeat is faster than normal. It was your scar, wasn't it?" It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Harry didn't answer her, but still, she plowed on. "Did you see anything?" she asked. Harry glared at her and then turned to face the fat lady. He said the password and a roar of sound greeted him. He glanced back at where Dragon should have been, but she was gone. As he entered, Ron came running towards him, beaming all over his face and slopping butterbeer down his front from the goblet he was clutching. "Harry, I did it, I'm keeper." "What? Oh, brilliant," said Harry, trying to smile naturally. Hawks, who was sitting near the window with Wilf, was rubbing his temples and frowning. "So much noise," Fox complained. "Ottersand looks strange," Wilf said. "He's a little pale." "He is," Fox said, looking at Harry. The boy was walking over to a dozing Hermione and after he woke her up, he started telling her what had happened in Umbridge's office. Stag ghosted around behind the pair and overheard everything that Harry said. "You're worried you know who's controlling her like he controlled Quirrell," Hermione said. Stag decided it was time to interfere. "Who's Quirrell?" Stag asked, making Harry and Hermione jump in surprise. "He sounds troublesome." Hermione and Harry glanced at each other. Stag caught the look. "If you don't tell me, I'll just go and ask Dumbledore-san," Stag said. "He was the defense against the dark arts teacher in our first year," Harry said, unwilling to give him information. "He was possessed by Voldemort." Hermione jumped a little when Harry said the dark wizard's name. Harry and Stag both ignored this. "It may just be a coincidence," Fox said. He appeared behind Stag and his voice was deadly serious. "He could also have her under the Imperious curse," Harry said, ignoring Fox and Stag and only facing Hermione. He's already got his own body. Fox hissed in frustration. The boy had a major attitude problem. But last year your scar hurt when nobody was touching you, and didn't Dumbledore say it had to do with what you know who was feeling at the time? Hermione said, sparing a quick glance at the guards. She wasn't sure whether or not to include them. The ninja had entered the conversation, but Harry was pushing them out of it. She's evil, said Harry flatly, twisted. She's horrible, yes, but Harry, I think you ought to tell Dumbledore your scar hurt. I'm not bothering him with this. It's not a big deal. It's been hurting on and off all summer, it was just a bit worse tonight, that's all. Harry, I'm sure Dumbledore would want to be bothered by this. Yeah, said Harry, before he could stop himself, that's the only bit of me Dumbledore cares about, isn't it, my scar? It seems as though the relationship between Potter-san and Dumbledore-san is a little shaky, Stag said. Fox agreed. And you, Hermione snapped, directing her glare towards the two shinobi, did you know that it's considered rude to talk to people in another language when they're right in front of you? Well, Potter-san was ignoring us, wasn't he? Fox said. Don't you think that's rude? A little annoyed, Fox went off to sit with Wilf. Stag gave Hermione and Harry one last glance before joining his comrades. Hermione turned her exasperated face towards the scarred boy. What? Harry asked when Hermione gave him the look. You could try to act more mature, Hermione said wearily. You don't want to make the guards upset. Harry gave a short bark of sarcastic laughter. Upset? Harry repeated. Hermione, they're ninja. Me ignoring them is not going to make them upset. They have hearts of steel. I doubt they feel anything anymore. How wrong he was. How very, very wrong. Harry, Hermione said, but the boy had stood up. I'm going to bed, Harry said, not meeting Hermione's gaze. Night, Hermione. Hermione watched Harry's retreating back before finally deciding to go up to bed as well. Harry had been on edge lately. With all the detentions, the homework, the sleepiness, the ninja, it was all becoming unbearable. He had started to become pissed easily, like a bomb waiting to explode. It was only a matter of time before he did. Trespass at Ministry. Sturgis Podmore, 28, of number 2, Laburnum Gardens, Clapham, has appeared in front of the Wizengamot charged with trespass and attempted robbery at the Ministry of Magic on 31st August. Podmore was arrested by Ministry of Magic watch wizard Eric Munch, who found him attempting to force his way through a top security door at 1 o'clock in the morning. Podmore, who refused to speak in his own defense, was convicted on both charges and sentenced to 6 months in Azkaban. Sturgis Podmore, Dove said slowly. Fox, this was the man who was supposed to be at headquarters on the day Potter-san and his companies were going to take the Hogwarts Express. So that's why he wasn't there, Fox recalled. He snatched the news article out of Dove's hands and scanned over it quickly. I knew something was off, but I didn't pay much attention to it. The door, Cat said thoughtfully. The Order are guarding a door, aren't they? Yeah, Fox said, though Dumbledore-san wouldn't give me the details. Do you think Podmore is a spy? Raccoon asked. Might be possible, Slug said. But the Ministry may have lured him there. Lured? Dragon said, surprised. Why would they do that? He's with Dumbledore, Hawk said coolly. They want to do some framing. Have you read the things that the Ministry say about him? They want to get rid of him. Stupid, Stag muttered, absolutely troublesome. That would be like trying to get rid of Hokage-sama, Wolf agreed. Potter-san is going, Fox said, sighing heavily. I better go watch over him. Cat, Slug, Dove, Stag, you guys guard the castle today. Yes, Captain. The sky was a clear, sapphire blue. White clouds drifted across it and the sun shone down. Fox smiled secretly. This was the weather he liked. He watched Harry and Ron zoom around the Quidditch pitch as they practiced, but then turned his mind on other things such as the Akatsuki. Kissam was missing. Tsunade mentioned that he had gotten into contact with Voldemort. What was he planning to do? Were they reaching some kind of agreement? If Kissam managed that, then he probably would bring over Itachi, Dodara, Sasori, Zetsu and Madara. They would be in very deep shit if he did. Harry and Ron practiced for a few hours, then went back inside for lunch and then out again for their real Quidditch practice with the rest of the Gryffindor team. Unfortunately, there were some unwanted spectators. How are things here? Raccoon asked, joining Fox as he stared up at the flying players. Slytherin and Gryffindor are rivals, Fox commented. Malfoy and the rest of the Slytherin Quidditch team were jeering and shouting out curses. He watched as Ron, who seemed to be the most affected, turned red and fumbled more and more every time Quaffle came his way. I don't understand this game, Fox said in a frustrated voice after 5 minutes. Raccoon made an amused sound. It's really not that hard, Raccoon said. See the big red ball? There are heaps of balls flying around up there, Fox grumbled. Raccoon rolled his eyes. The red one? Yeah. 3 players have to use that ball to score. You mean put it through the hoop? Exactly. The 2 black balls try to knock the players off their brooms. Interesting. And 2 players have the clubs to beat those 2 balls back. Okay. I think Potter-san is trying to find the tiny golden ball. The one buzzing around the hoops. Yeah. Shouldn't Potter-san go catch it? I doubt he can see as well as us. The conversation lasted for quite a while before both Fox and Raccoon tensed when they smelled the irony tank scent of blood. Katie Bell is bleeding, Fox said, relaxing. I think Weasley-san hit her with a big red ball. Evidently, Raccoon said dryly. Fox mock punched him. We should use this pitch to train, Fox said, a note of admiration in his voice. It's quite big. I'm out of shape, Raccoon said. My sand hasn't been used properly for a while. Yeah. What do you think of the newspaper article? Raccoon asked, turning serious. Fox ran a hand through his hair, sighing. I don't know, Fox said. We've got enough to worry about. Remember, the Akatsuki are also posing a threat. True that, Raccoon said, turning to face the sky. But such is the life of a shinobi. Danger never leaves us. Fox gave him a half smile. After Fred and George Weasley left to take Katie to the hospital wing, the rest of the Gryffindor team headed back to the common room. Fox looked longingly at the pitch and then made a cage bunchen to follow Harry back up to the castle. He then turned to face Raccoon, who had raised an imaginary eyebrow. Want to spar? Fox asked. Raccoon sighed. Alright, but I'm not going to go easy on you. Good. Sirius appeared in the Gryffindor fireplace later that night, although when he did Fox, Wolf and Stag attempted to attack him. Fox chucked a few kunai into the fire, missing Sirius on purpose. If it was an intruder, it was just to scare him. Akamaru growled threateningly at Sirius's head and Stag prepared some shadow jutsu. Wait, Harry said, trying to hold them back. It's alright. It's Sirius. Why is Blacksand's head in the fire? Fox hissed, never taking his eyes off the fire. Blue powder, Hermione said. She didn't bother to explain. It could be a trap, Wolf said. Seriously, you worry too much. Not everything is going to kill you, you know, Harry snapped. He turned to face his godfather, who was looking at the shinobi warily. Hello Sirius. Sirius and Harry began talking, with Ron and Hermione adding in their bit of dialogue every once in a while. The ninja didn't listen for the first part of the conversation until something caught their attention. Dumbledore said my scar hurt whenever Voldemort was feeling a powerful emotion, said Harry. Well, now he's back it's bound to hurt more often, said Sirius. So you don't think it had anything to do with Umbridge touching me when I was in detention with her? Harry asked. Dragon reported to me about that incident, Fox said, interrupting them. But she said she did not feel any evil or negative aura coming off her. Right, said Harry, barely listening to what Fox said. He just wanted to talk to Sirius. I don't think so, Sirius said, answering Harry's previous question. I know her by reputation and I'm sure she's no Death Eater. She's foul enough to be one, said Harry darkly, and Ron and Hermione nodded vigorously in agreement. Yes, but the world isn't split into good people and Death Eaters, said Sirius with a wry smile. I know she's a nasty piece of work, though you should hear Remus talk about her. The ninja tuned out again and then tuned back in after about 5 minutes. So, what are Umbridge's lessons like? Sirius asked. Is she training you all to kill half-breeds? No, said Harry. She's not letting us use magic at all. All we have to do is read the stupid textbook, said Ron. Ah, well, that figures, said Sirius. Our information from inside the ministry is that Fudge doesn't want you trained in combat. Trained in combat? Repeated Harry incredulously. What does he think we're doing here, forming some sort of wizard army? Trained in combat, Fox said. A bright idea flashed in his mind. According to Blacksand, that is what the ministry fears most. Combat eh? Stag, Wolf, Fox murmured. I've got an idea. I'm getting worried, Wolf said. Stag merely looked at him. Fox was saying that with the air of someone who had just come up with a bright scheme and was planning to use it as soon as possible because it was so awesome. Stag, could you get everyone to gather for a meeting right now? Fox asked. His voice was carefully measured and level, betraying none of the emotions he felt inside. Fine, Stag sighed. Troublesome. What is it now? Slug asked curiously. The other shinobi had come, as Fox had instructed, and they all now stood, or sat, in a loose circle in the Gryffindor common room. We're going to teach the students some taijutsu, Fox announced. There was a shocked silence after he said that, and then a quiet uproar. What the hell are you talking about? Wolf growled. Teach the students taijutsu? Are you out of your freaking mind? Dove hissed. We're not allowed to, they're not citizens of Konoha, Raccoon said quietly. Raccoon's right. We're not allowed to show outsiders any techniques, Hawk said calmly, though his eyes were burning behind his mask. Are you planning to try and make them learn jutsu next? You're going to kill them. Dragon snarled. Why do we have to teach them anything? Cat asked, her voice disapproving. Fox waited until all the quiet shouting had subdued before speaking again. Stag did not seem surprised. It was as though he was expecting it. They are too reliant on their wands, Fox said. They need to learn something other than magic. Just like we have to learn things other than jutsu, we have to learn taijutsu in case our chakra reserve ever runs dry. They are not ninja, Hawk said. Have you seen their physique? They don't exercise at all, and Quidditch is the only sport they play, except that's not every physical either. All they do is sit on a long stick and fly around. It will be a strain on their bodies if they try to learn taijutsu. Not to mention the fact that outsiders aren't meant to learn anything about the ninja world, Slug said. Fox sighed. All we're going to do is teach them basic taijutsu, he said. We could call it self-defense. We're not going to teach them any jutsu, anyway. They pretty much have no chakra at all. You also want to do this because of Umbridge, Stag said, his lips twitching. Fox glanced at the genius. Somewhat, Fox said. Plus, it will be good for the kids. Silence fell again as the ninja looked at one another. Well, you're the captain, so we trust you, Dove sighed. Softly, the others concurred. Alright then, Fox said, glad that his team was cooperating. I'll run this idea past Dumbledore, see if he agrees. You do that, Dragon said, switching back to English. We have to get back to guarding. Let's go, Slug. The weapons mistress and medic ninja left the common room, and in pairs, the remaining shinobi disappeared as well. Hogwarts High Inquisitor. Harry repeated darkly. What does that mean? The trio read the article on Umbridge, which was titled Mini-Story Seeks Educational Reform. Dolores Umbridge appointed first ever High Inquisitor. The ministry must be crap, Wolf said after he read the article. He looked over at Harry, Ron and Hermione, who were discussing the recent turn of events in low voices. What's everyone milling around here for? Hermione asked curiously. There was a large group of students concentrated around the bulletin board and the trio struggled to the front. Harry's eyes widened when he saw the notice displayed. It was relatively short and dull, but it conveyed the meaning nonetheless. Self-defense lessons. Every Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Taught by the guards. Meet at 9:45 in the Great Hall. Self-defense. Hermione echoed faintly. That sounds kinda cool, Ron said. He turned to his two friends. Do you guys want to join? I don't know, Harry said doubtfully. We have heaps of homework. In truth, he didn't exactly want to go to a class taught by sadistic ninja. Otter-san, you are required to go, said a cold voice behind him. Harry turned and saw Fox. You have no choice in the matter. Anger flared up inside him. He was sick of people deciding everything for him, repressing him. I don't have the time, Harry said irritably. I have heaps of homework to do. I told you, you have no choice in the matter, Fox said. He turned and disappeared with a poof. Arg. Harry snarled, pulling at his hair. Well, since you're going, I'll go as well, Ron said, patting his arm sympathetically. I'm coming, Hermione said. I really want to see how the ninja fight. Excuse me, Kat said quietly behind them. I think you are all late to class. Alarmed, Hermione checked her watch and gasped. We are so late, Hermione whispered, and they all pelted to History of Magic. Hermione, it's just Professor Binns, he won't even care whether we're there or not, Ron said consoling as they hurtled down the corridors. Yes, but I have to take notes, Hermione said. Thankfully, they were only about 5 minutes late and the ghost teacher didn't even look up as the three entered his classroom. Kat slipped in as well and sat herself at the very back bench. After History of Magic came potions. Snape stalked around the class handing the students back their moonstone essays. Kat saw that Harry had received a D. She watched in interest as the class went about making their potion for the day. She noticed that Harry seemed determined today not to give Snape an excuse to fail him and he read each line carefully before acting upon it. She approved of the boy's actions. After lunch, Kat followed the trio to divination. After not fainting from the excessive perfume in the tower, Kat immediately went for the seat beside the window. She felt sorry for Wolf as she knew about his keen sense of smell. He would surely pass out in a room like this. Kat shifted quietly when she noticed Umbridge enter the room. She had heard about Umbridge becoming the High Inquisitor and knew that she would be inspecting classes. Professor Trelawney seemed a little perturbed that Umbridge was here and she didn't seem as mystical today as she normally was. Pat switched on her Byakugan and saw that Trelawney wasn't faring very well in Umbridge's notes. Poor woman. In defense against the dark arts, Harry yet again landed himself with another week's worth of detention with Umbridge for speaking out of line. Kat was growing decidedly weary of Harry's outbursts. The cut on the back of Harry's hand reopened once again as he wrote, I must not tell lies over and over again. The very worst part of his second week back at school was Angelina's reaction. He had already missed the keeper's tryouts and now he couldn't go to practice again. She cornered him just as he arrived at the Gryffindor table 2 for breakfast on Tuesday and shouted so loudly that Professor McGonagall came sweeping down upon the pair of them from the staff table. "Miss Johnson, how dare you make such a racket in the Great Hall?" 5 points from Gryffindor. "But Professor, he's gone and landed himself in detention again." "What's this, Potter?" said McGonagall sharply, rounding on Harry. "Detention? From whom?" "From Professor Umbridge," muttered Harry, not meeting her beady, square-framed eyes. "Are you telling me," she said, lowering her voice so that the group of curious Ravenclaws behind them could not hear, "that after the warning I gave you last Monday, you lost your temper in Professor Umbridge's class again?" "Yes," Harry muttered, speaking to the floor. "Potter, you must get a grip on yourself. You are heading for serious trouble." Another 5 points from Gryffindor. "But what?" "Professor, no," Harry said, furious at this injustice. "I'm already being punished by her, why do you have to take points as well?" "Because detentions do not appear to have any effect on you whatsoever," said Professor McGonagall tartly. She strode back towards the staff table. Angelina gave Harry a look of deepest disgust and stalked away, upon which he flung himself on the bench beside Ron, fuming. "Potter-san." Harry cringed inwardly. The voice of Fawkes did not sound very pleased. "What now?" he muttered. He turned to face the towering figure of the ANBU captain. "You got yourself detention again," Fawkes snapped. "When are you going to control yourself? You wasted about 3 hours of Cat's time last night." "I don't care about Cat's time," Harry said, annoyed. Fawkes growled. "This isn't about Cat's time," Fawkes said. "It's about keeping your temper in check and staying out of Umbridge's way." "I think I know that," Harry said. "Do you?" Fawkes asked, his eyes flashing, "because if you do then you would stop this childishness and keep your toe in line." He started to turn and held his fingers up in a strange position. Harry remembered that whenever the guards poofed away, they would hold their fingers up like that. "Don't forget to come to self-defense on Saturday." Before Harry could retort, however, Fawkes had disappeared in a cloud of white smoke. "I hate my life," Harry muttered. Chapter 6. Do it ourselves. "Well," said Hermione tentatively. "You know, I was thinking today." She shot a slightly nervous look at Harry and then plunged on, "I was thinking that maybe the time's come when we should just do it ourselves." Harry and Wolf had just come back from Umbridge's detention. The former had discovered his two friends in conversation and the latter sat down with Fawkes and Stag, both of whom were watching the fire. "Do what ourselves?" said Harry suspiciously. He glanced at his two friends and caught the look that was shared between them. "What's going on?" Wolf muttered. "Granger-san and Weasley-san were thinking about Potter-san teaching a group of students defense against the dark arts behind Umbridge's back," Fawkes said. "They just need Potter-san to agree with it. Apparently he's the best in the year." "It sounds troublesome," Stag grumbled. "A bunch of brats running around learning dangerous spells, who knows what might happen." "Well, we should start to learn defense against the dark arts ourselves," Hermione said. "Hum off it," groaned Ron. "You want us to learn extra work?" "I realize that Harry and I are behind on homework again and it's only the second week of school. But this is much more important than homework," said Hermione. Both Harry and Ron goggled at her. Even Fawkes raised a hidden eyebrow at the serious tone of her voice. "I didn't think there was anything in the universe more important than homework," said Ron. Hermione seemed to miss the sarcasm in the words. "Don't be silly, of course there is," said Hermione. Her face was alight with the enthusiasm only SPEW could stir up in her. Harry suddenly felt a little nervous. "It's about preparing ourselves for what's out there. It's about making sure we really can defend ourselves. If we don't learn anything for a whole year. We can't do much by ourselves," said Ron in a defeated voice. "I mean, alright, we can go and look up jinxes in the library and try and practice them, I suppose." "No, I agree, we've gone past the stage where we can just learn things out of books," said Hermione. "We need a teacher, a proper one, who can show us how to use the spells and correct us if we're going wrong." "They're setting this up," Wolf said, "the two of them. They're trying to draw Harry to the fact that they want him as their teacher." "Obviously," said Stag dryly. "If you're talking about Lupin being our teacher," Harry began. No, I'm not talking about Lupin," said Hermione. "He's too busy with the order and, anyway, the most we could see him is during Hogsmeade weekends and that's not nearly often enough." "Do, then," said Harry, frowning at her. Hermione heaved a very deep and long-suffering sigh. "Isn't it obvious?" she said. "I'm talking about you, Harry." There was a moment's silence. Harry stared at her. A light night breeze rattled the window panes behind Ron and the fire guttered. "About me what?" said Harry. "I'm talking about you teaching us defense against the dark arts." Harry stared at her. Then he turned to Ron, expecting him to be exasperated. But instead, he was frowning slightly, apparently thinking. Then he said, "That's an idea." "They definitely set this up," Wolf said. "We know they did," Fawkes said. "What's an idea?" said Harry. "You," said Ron, "teaching us to do it. But I'm not a teacher, I can't." "Harry, you're the best in the year at defense against the dark arts," said Hermione. "Me? No, I'm not. You've beaten me in every test." "Actually, I haven't," said Hermione coolly. "You beat me in our third year, the only year we both sat the test and had a teacher who actually knew the subject. But I'm not talking about test results, Harry. Think of what you've done." "Crap," Wolf said. "Are we going to allow this club thing?" "No idea," Fox said, "maybe. The kids do need to protect themselves. And that Umbridge woman isn't teaching them anything. First year you saved the Philosopher's Stone from you-know-who." "But that was luck," said Harry, "it wasn't skill." "Second year," Ron interrupted, "you killed the basilisk and destroyed Riddle." "Yeah, but if Fox hadn't turned up, I..." "Third year," said Ron, louder still, "you fought off about 100 Dementors at once." "Yeah, but..." "Last year," Ron said, almost shouting now, "you fought off you-know-who again." "Listen to me," said Harry, almost angrily, because Ron and Hermione were both smirking now. "Just listen to me, alright? It sounds great when you say it like that, but all that stuff was luck. I didn't know what I was doing half the time, I didn't plan any of it, I just did whatever I could think of, and I nearly always had help." Ron and Hermione were still smirking, and Harry felt his temper rise. He wasn't even sure why he was feeling so angry. "Don't sit there grinning like you know better than I do, I was there, wasn't I?" he said heatedly. "I know what went on, alright. And I didn't get through any of that because I was brilliant at defense against the dark arts, I got through it because help came at the right time, or because I guessed right, but I just blundered through it all, I didn't have a clue what I was doing." "Stop laughing." Harry's book bag fell to the floor and spilled open. He became aware that he was on his feet, though he couldn't remember standing up. Crookshank streaked away under the sofa. Ron and Hermione's smiles vanished. Fox, Stag and Wolf were not even looking in their direction, but their shoulders were stiff and they exuded an uptight aura. "You don't know what it's like. Neither of you've never had to face him, have you? You think it's just memorizing a bunch of spells and throwing them at him, like you're in class or something. The whole time you're sure there's nothing between you and dying except your own brain or guts or whatever, like you can think straight when you know you're about a nanosecond from being murdered or tortured or watching your friends die. They've never taught us that in their classes, what it's like to deal with things like that, and you two sit there acting like I'm a clever little boy to be standing here, alive, like Diggory was stupid. Like he messed up, you just don't get it, that could just have easily have been me, it would have been if Voldemort hadn't needed me." Silently, the Fox's respect for the boy, which was at an all-time low, rose a little again. If all Harry had said were true, then it meant he knew what it'd like to be in battle. Harry was right. No one taught you how to face death, how to withstand torture, or how to not lose your mind when one of your friends is killed right before your very eyes. When Fox was still in the academy, he thought that being a ninja meant being strong. He thought it meant learning the most jutsu or being the toughest, but life experiences had taught him otherwise. "Potter-san is right," said the cool, lazy voice of Stag, "you don't know what it's like. Do not go assuming things for yourselves." Hermione and Ron glanced at the guard. "Someone is coming down the stairs," Wolf reported. "I think Harry's shouting woke them up." He flashed up the stairs and found an unsuspecting Dean poking his head out sleepily. Dean didn't even have time to react before Wolf hit a pressure point on his neck and the boy slumped forward, unconscious. Wolf picked him up easily, moved silently into the dorm and dropped him back onto his bed. His body flickered back downstairs. Harry, Ron and Hermione were too engaged with each other to notice anything. "Harry," said Hermione timidly, "don't you see? This is exactly why we need you. We need to know what it's really like facing Voldemort." It was the first time she had ever said Voldemort's name. This alone seemed to calm Harry down. He seemed to deflate and he sat in his chair again. "Think about it," said Hermione quietly. "Please." Harry could not think of anything to say. He was feeling ashamed of his outburst already. He nodded, hardly aware of what he was agreeing to. "Well, I'm off to bed," said Hermione, in a voice that was clearly as natural as she could make it. "Good night." Ron had gotten to his feet as well. "Coming?" he said awkwardly to Harry. "Yeah," said Harry, in a minute." Ron nodded and went up to the dorm. Harry was left alone with the guards. He opened his mouth to say something, but no sound came out. "Just go to bed, Potter-san," Fox said, not looking in his direction. "Good night." Harry closed his mouth and forced his feet to move and he followed Ron upstairs. 2 weeks had passed and not a word was said about Harry giving defense against the dark arts lessons. It was the end of September. The evening was windy and blustery, the trio were found sitting in the library and strangely enough, the whole group of guards were sitting at a table not too far away from them as well. Tsunade said that now Itachi and Dodara have gone missing from the ninja continent as well as Kisum, Fox said. That means they are here in the wizarding dimension. Strange how they haven't made a move yet, Slug said. She ran a hand through her pink hair. And is there any news about them allying themselves with Voldemort? Yeah, it's been confirmed, Fox nodded. He bit his lip. Things are going to get dangerous. We still don't know how strong Voldemort is yet, Dragon said, or how many minions he has. Death Eaters, Dove said. His comrades are called Death Eaters. Minions sound cooler. I doubt he thinks of them as comrades, Raccoon said flatly. He doesn't seem to be the type to have very many friends. Like you were when you were younger, Slug teased. Raccoon gave her a half-hearted push. How will the Akatsuki know which one is Naruto? Cat asked. After all, the identities of the ANBU are supposed to be a secret. They have their sources, Dragon said darkly. Alright, let's think, Hawk said. What are the tactics the Akatsuki may use to lure Fox to them? After all, he's what they're after. They could kidnap someone as a bargaining chip, Stag suggested, or they could just charge up to the castle and capture him. He yawned and mumbled a troublesome under his breath. Don't forget, Voldemort wants Potter Sand, Cat said. He'll probably use the same tactics as the Akatsuki. Zetsu can also pretend to be someone we know, Stag said. He did that a few times in the Fourth Shinobi World War. We lost a good number of troops because of his ability. Hey, what about the Jutsu class? Dove asked suddenly. It's on this Saturday, isn't it? Yeah, Wolf said, gotta get ready for that as well. What do you think they'll teach us? Ron asked. He sounded excited. I mean, we haven't actually seen them fight before, have we? And they're supposed to be ninja. And ninja are supposed to be dangerous. Harry, Ron and Hermione entered the Great Hall on Saturday morning and found a crowd of students milling around. Are all these people here for the class? Hermione asked, impressed. It's quite a lot. No Slytherins, though, Harry said. Good. Alright, everyone. Called a commanding voice. It belonged to Dragon. Follow us, please. Dragon appeared and she casually walked up the walls, making many people gasp. Is she walking up the wall? Ron whispered, bloody awesome. Eagerly, the mass of people followed Dragon outside. She led them towards the lake and then told them to sit down. There were about 50 or 60 of them. Harry sat down in the grass and wondered what the guards had in store for them. Gathered in front of them were all of the shinobi. They stared at the chattering student silently, though Fox flickered around and asked muttered questions to his comrades every once in a while. Be quiet, Raccoon said. His cold voice silenced everyone and they all turned their attention to the front. Good morning everyone, glad you could make it, said Slug. Now, I'm sure you know that the whole point of this class is to learn Taijutsu, or in other words, self-defense. You mean you'll teach us how to fight like samurais and stuff? Asked a boy eagerly. Somewhat, Fox said. But first, you have to build up your strength. Taijutsu is physical, Hawk said coolly. Right now, none of you have the stamina to do much. Therefore, before we start anything serious, you have to work on that. Now, give us 5 laps around the lake, Cat said. She had a smile in her voice. The Hogwarts students stared at one another, not sure whether or not the shinobi were being serious. It was a little sudden they were expecting lectures or demonstrations. Do you know how big the lake is? A girl asked. Obviously, Dove said. It's right there. She jerked her blonde head towards the shining water. Now get moving. Slowly, the kids got to their feet and started running. A large moving block of black. They should have changed out of their school uniform, Fox murmured. Ah well. The students managed quite well for the first half of the lap, but by the time they finished their first one, many had fallen behind. It seemed the fittest ones were the Quidditch players, though their faces were red and sweaty as well. They really are unfit, Hawk groaned. How are we supposed to teach them anything? By the time the 5 laps were finished, the students looked like they were about to die. Too slow, Fox said. When we say 5 laps, we expect you to finish it in 5 minutes. It took you 20. Too long, much too long. Well, why don't you try and run around the lake 5 times, a 5th-year boy grumbled. It's not as easy as it looks, you know. 5 minutes. That's way too short. We can do it in 1 minute or less, Cat said. Stag, want to demonstrate? Stag complained, but did so anyway. He flashed around the lake 5 times, so fast he was blurred. Harry felt his mouth open in shock. Crap. Thanks for that, Stag Dragon said. Now, I want all of you to do at least 50 push-ups. Eyes widened and for a few minutes there were large mutterings of I can't even do 1 push-up, but they all complied. Fox's lips twitched as groans and grunts filled the air as the students struggled to push themselves off the ground. He dragged a hand down his mask. They really do suck, Fox whispered. At this rate, we'll be going forever. Excuse me, a first-year girl said. Fox glanced at her. Yes. I have a question. Go for it. As ninja, do you only fight by using taijutsu? The jutsu, Fox corrected her. And no, we have various techniques. Can we see them? Sure, Fox said. The conversation had gotten the interest of the surrounding students, and now the whole crowd had their eyes on Fox. And Fox wondered which technique to show them, then, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The perfect copy of Fox appeared, and excited muttering sprang between the people. Do you have any offensive techniques? Asked a boy. Rasengan. The familiar blue ball of spinning energy. Fox smashed it into the ground, making a small crater. Sorry, said Fox. I held back. Wow, whispered Hermione. I wonder how they do it. They're not using wands or anything. Beats me, muttered Harry. In truth, he was also very impressed. Enough gawking, get on with those push-ups, Hawk said. Halfway through the session, Umbridge appeared, looking with distaste at all the sweaty and exhausted students, but with a few cold words from Fox, she left rather quickly. The guards walked among the students as they did their push-ups, correcting their poses and giving quiet critics. The ones who did well were the ones that they passed without comment. Harry knew he was doing badly. He could only lift himself up for one push-up, but to his surprise Raccoon helped him out quite a bit. He was prepared for sneering and name-calling, but then again, not everyone was like Malfoy. Harry checked the time, 2 o'clock. During the times between 10 and 2, the guards had made them do laps, push-ups, high kicks, jumps, lifting your arms up and down again, and various moves that inflexible people couldn't do, that was most of them, and finally they ended it with learning how to punch. By the end of the session, Harry felt as though he had been exercising for an entire week. The shinobi insisted though that all this would help them with future training. The funniest thing was, over the next few days, the students who went to self-defense class on Saturday were seen hobbling around, clutching their backs or their stomachs or wincing when they sat down. It seemed that the intense muscle pain had set in. The first weekend of October meant the first Hogsmeade trip for the year. Hermione had told Harry that a group of students would be meeting in the Hog's Head to join in the defense against the Dark Arts Club that Harry was teaching. The trio, accompanied by Slug and Raccoon, set off to Hogsmeade. Cat and Fox would explore the streets for anything interesting or suspicious, while Slug and Raccoon would be tailing Harry. The rest of the shinobi stayed to guard Hogwarts. Fox and Cat bade goodbye to the other two and veered left to check out the Hogsmeade streets. Raccoon and Slug followed the trio into the Hog's Head. They walked down the main street past Zonko's Wizarding Joke Shop, where they were not surprised to see Fred, George and Lee Jordan, past the post office, from which owls issued at regular intervals, and turned up a side street at the top of which stood a small inn. A battered wooden sign hung from a rusty bracket over the door, with a picture on it of a wild boar's severed head, leaking blood onto the white cloth around it. The three of them glanced back at Slug and Raccoon, but to their surprise, found that the two had disappeared. They hesitated at the door, but then Hermione pushed it open and they entered. The Hog's Head comprised of one small, dingy and very dirty room that smelled strongly of something that might have been goats. The bay windows were so encrusted with grime that very little daylight could permeate the room, which was lit instead with the stubs of candles sitting on rough wooden tables. The floor seemed at first glance to be compressed earth, though as Harry stepped on it, he realized that there was stone beneath what seemed to be the accumulated filth of centuries. There was a man at the bar whose whole head was wrapped in dirty grey bandages, though he was still managing to gulp endless glasses of some smoking, fiery substance through a slit over his mouth. Two figures shrouded in hoods sat at a table in one of the windows, and in a shadowy corner beside the fireplace, sat a witch with a thick black veil that fell to her toes. There was also a man who wore nothing but black, and a long nose pointed out from underneath the hood. The barman sidled towards them out of a black room. He was a grumpy-looking old man with a great deal of long grey hair and beard. He was tall and thin and looked vaguely familiar to Harry. "So, who did you say is supposed to be meeting us?" Harry asked as the trio moved to a table. "Just a couple of people," Hermione said, checking her watch. "I told them to be here about now, and I'm sure they all know where it is. Oh, look, this might be them now." The door of the pub had opened. A thick band of dusty sunlight split the room in two for a moment and then vanished, blocked by the incoming rush of people. First came Neville with Dean and Lavender, who were closely followed by Parvati and Padma Patil with Jo and one of her usually giggly girlfriends, then Luna Lovegood, Katie Bell, Alicia Spinnet and Angelina Johnson, Colin and Dennis Creevy, Ernie Macmillan, Justin Finch Fletchley, Hannah Abbott, a Hufflepuff girl with a long plait down her back whose name Harry did not know. Three Ravenclaw boys he was pretty sure were called Anthony Goldstein, Michael Corner and Terry Boot, Ginny. Closely followed by a tall, skinny blonde boy with an upturned nose whom Harry vaguely recognized as being a member of the Hufflepuff Quidditch team, and, bringing up the rear, Fred and George Weasley with their friend Lee Jordan. "Oh my," Sakura whispered. She was the witch covered in the thick black veil, and Gara was the man whose head was wrapped in dirty bandages. Gara watched under heavily lidded eyes as Hermione spoke up first, her voice high-pitched, and then a girl asking Harry whether or not he could do a corporeal patronus. He saw Sakura shift slightly in her seat. Hermione then moved on to asking the group whether or not they wanted to take lessons from Harry. There was a general murmur of agreement. Hermione then asked everyone to sign a piece of paper. After signing, people left in twos and threes. How many people were there? Fox asked. Slug cringed. Quite a lot, she sighed, from all houses apart from Slytherin. They were in Gryffindor Tower, and Slug had come to deliver her report. Here, Dumbledore gave us this, Fox said. He gave her 2 radio transmitters that were to be strapped around the neck. Does it work? Slug asked. I thought Dumbledore said there was too much magic in the air for electrical appliances to work. He cast a charm on it, Fox said. It'll work anywhere, even underwater. Great, Slug said. Is this one for Raccoon? Yes, Fox said. Make sure you give it to him. I will. Is this all? Yes. You may take your leave. Arigato, Captain. How's Michiko? Fox asked. Stag glanced at his captain and a small smile curved at his lips. The pair of them were in the Gryffindor common room, lazing about by the fire and watching the students study. Damari sent me a letter last night, Stag said. She said she's fine. Healthy? Fox asked. Yeah, Stag nodded. That's good, Fox said. Though it's a shame you had to go on this mission. Ah well, we need the money, Stag said, though he was still regretful he couldn't stay home with his wife and newborn daughter. Who's Michiko? Harry couldn't help asking. He was just passing by and had picked up on the conversation. Fox looked at the scarred boy. My daughter, Stag said. He watched as shock flitted across Harry's face. Oh, was all the boy could say. How old is she? 2 months, Stag said. As Harry moved away, Stag sighed and mumbled a troublesome under his breath. Chapter 7. The First DA Meeting. By order of the High Inquisitor of Hogwarts. All student organizations, societies, teams, groups and clubs are henceforth disbanded. An organization, society, team, group or club is hereby defined as a regular meeting of 3 or more students. Permission to reform may be sought from the High Inquisitor, Professor Umbridge. No student organization, society, team, group or club may exist without the knowledge and approval of the High Inquisitor. Any students found to have formed or to belong to an organization, society, team, group or club that has not been approved by the High Inquisitor will be expelled. The above is in accordance with the Educational Decree. Number 24. Signed. Dolores Jane Umbridge, High Inquisitor. As the trio trudged down the stone steps for potions, all 3 of them lost in thought, they heard the voice of Draco Malfoy, who was standing just outside Snape's classroom door, waving around an official-looking piece of parchment and talking much louder than was necessary so that they could hear every word. Yeah, Umbridge gave the Slytherin Quidditch team permission to continue playing straight away. I went to ask her first thing this morning. Well, it was pretty much automatic, I mean, she knows my father really well, he's always popping in and out of the ministry, it'll be interesting to see whether Gryffindor are allowed to keep playing, won't it? Hawk arrived and observed the obvious tension between the Gryffindors and the Slytherins. Trust Malfoy to stir things up. He realized he hadn't really met the blonde boy yet and once he saw Malfoy, it was an immediate hate at first sight. I mean, said Malfoy, raising his voice a little more, his grey eyes glittering malevolently in Harry and Ron's direction, if it's a question of influence with the ministry, I don't think they've got much chance from what my father says, they've been looking for an excuse to sack Arthur Weasley for years, and as for Potter carted off to St. Mungo's, apparently they've got a special ward for peoples whose brains have been addled by magic. Malfoy made a grotesque face, his mouth sagging open and his eyes rolling. Something collided hard with Harry's shoulder, knocking him sideways. A split second later he realized that Neville had just charged past him, heading straight for Malfoy. Neville, no. Before Harry could react, Hawk had flashed in and he hit a pressure point in Neville's neck, causing the boy to slump forward. Hawk hoisted the boy up over his shoulder and turned his cold pearly eyes towards Malfoy. You, Hawk said slowly, his voice steely. If you do not learn to stop provoking other people, I will personally make sure that you do. Now shut your mouth and get inside, brat. Hawk pointed a gloved finger to the door, in which Snape had just opened. Snape apparently did not find anything to take points from, seeing that Hawk had it all under control, and so with an unpleasant leer, he allowed the students into the classroom. Hawk dumped Neville into a seat and said that the boy would wake up soon. Umbridge is watching the fireplaces and reading the mail, Wolf reported. When Black San was meeting Potter San, Weasley San and Granger San in the fireplace using flu powder, it seems as though Umbridge knew where he was and tried to catch him. Did he get caught? Fox asked, though he already knew the answer. No. There was Quidditch practice that evening, as Angelina had gotten permission from Dumbledore to reform the Gryffindor Quidditch team. The weather, though, was not cooperating, and that evening there was a full-on storm. It was an hour before Angelina let her team back inside, conceding defeat. Ouch. Said Harry. He had just been drying himself, but now he pressed the towel to his face, his eyes screwed tight with pain. The scar on his forehead had seared again, more painfully than it had in weeks. Pat, though it seemed rather awkward, stood stiff and silent in the changing room. Her eyes had flickered over to Harry when his scar hurt, but otherwise said nothing. When the rest of the team left, Harry and Ron were the only ones in the changing room. Kat stepped up silently behind Harry. "Was it your scar?" she murmured. Harry jumped and glanced behind him. Yeah," he said. He knew it would not work if he lied to her. "What happened?" she asked. Ron looked at Harry, his face white. "He's angry," Harry muttered. "I felt anger. He wants something done, and it's not happening fast enough." "But how did you know?" said Ron. Harry shook his head and covered his eyes with his hands. "Is this what it was about last time?" said Ron in a hushed voice. "When your scar hurt in Umbridge's office? You know who was angry?" Harry shook his head. "Last time, it was because he was pleased," he said, "really pleased. He thought something good was going to happen." Pat was looking at him strangely. She definitely needed to report this to Fox. Quietly, she moved aside and let the two boys talk. She pressed the button on her radio. "Fox. It's Kat," she said. "I have a report." "Continue," Fox said. His voice sounded static. "Why?" "Potter sent scar hurt just now. It seems as though he can sense Voldemort's emotions," Kat said. She hoped her captain would understand that. "He did." "Right," Fox said. "That's a new development. Is that all?" "Hi. Thanks." Fox, over. Pat, over. Dobby had visited Harry during the night and had told him where to find the room of requirement. Excited, Harry passed the message on to the various students that had gathered in the Hog's Head a few weekends ago. With a jolt, Harry realized that he wasn't sure whether or not the guards knew about his rebellious little plan. He remembered that Stag, Fox and Wolf had been present when the trio had discussed the meeting, but that didn't confirm anything. Well, it confirmed a lot, but still. In herbology, Fox was watching over Harry. Though the boy didn't want to do it, he motioned for the guard to come over to him. "What is it, Gaki?" Fox asked. Harry felt a little intimidated by his presence, but plowed on. You know that we're having a defense against the dark arts meeting tonight, right?" Harry said tentatively. Professor Sprout was talking to some other students and didn't notice the chatter. "Of course we do," Fox said coolly. "Not many things around here get past us." Harry waited. Fox sighed softly. "Well, I don't really recommend it," Fox said. "But it doesn't put your life in danger, so I can't say anything against it." Relief washed through Harry and he gave the guard a quick and faint smile. Though Fox said nothing in return, Harry swore that the cerulean blue eyes peering through the holes in the mask became slightly warmer. At 7:30 that night, Harry, Ron and Hermione all left the Gryffindor common room, Harry clutching a certain piece of aged parchment in his hand. Harry knew the shinobi were there and so he walked without fear of getting caught. "Hold it," Harry warned, unfolding the piece of parchment at the top of the last staircase on the 7th floor, tapping it with his wand and muttering, "I solemnly swear that I am up to no good." Slug, who was shadowing the trio along with Fox, smiled slightly at the choice of words. A map of Hogwarts appeared on the blank surface of the parchment. Tiny black moving dots, labeled with names, showed where various people were. "Filch is on the 2nd floor," said Harry, holding the map close to his eyes, "and Mrs. Norris is on the 4th. "And Umbridge?" said Hermione anxiously. "In her office," said Harry, pointing. "Okay, let's go." They hurried along the corridor to the place where Dobby had described to Harry, a stretch of blank wall opposite an enormous tapestry depicting Barnabas, the Barmy's foolish attempt to train trolls for the ballet. "Okay," said Harry quietly, while a moth-eaten troll paused in his relentless clubbing of the would-be ballet teacher to watch them. Dobby said to walk past this bit of wall 3 times, concentrating hard on what we need. Slug watched with interest as they walked past a bit of wall, looks of intense focus on their faces. She watched as a highly polished door appeared on the wall. Ron was staring at it, looking slightly wary. They all entered, eyes widening at what they saw inside. The walls were lined with wooden bookcases, and instead of chairs there were large silk cushions on the floor. A set of shelves at the far end of the room carried a range of instruments such as sneakoscopes, secrecy sensors and a large cracked faux glass. Fox turned on his radio and contacted everyone. "This is Fox. Calling all shinobi," he said. 7 crackly highs were heard. "The room of requirement has been found. He then proceeded to explain the instructions to everyone and they all confirmed that they understood. Fox, out. Slowly, all the students who were at the Hog's Head appeared. They were impressed with the place Harry had found. After about 15 minutes, Harry confirmed that everyone was here. "Well," said Harry as he stared at the assembled group of people. "I've been thinking about the sort of stuff we ought to do first," and he noticed a raised hand. "What, Hermione?" "I think we ought to elect a leader," said Hermione. Harry's leader, said Cho, looking at Hermione as if she was crazy. Yes, but I think we ought to vote on it properly, said Hermione, unperturbed. It makes it formal and it gives him authority. So everyone who thinks Harry ought to be our leader. Everyone put their hand up, including Zacharias Smith, though he did it rather grudgingly. Right, thanks, said Harry, who could feel his face burning. And what, Hermione? I also think we should have a name, she said brightly. It would promote a feeling of team spirit and unity, don't you think? Can we be the Anti-Umbridge League? Said Angelina hopefully. Or the Ministry of Magic, our morons group? Suggested Fred. I was thinking, said Hermione, more of a name that didn't tell everyone what we were up to, so we can refer to it safely outside meetings. The Defense Association. Said Cho. The DA for short, so nobody knows what we're talking about. Yeah, DA's good, said Ginny. Only let's make it stand for Dumbledore's army, because that's the ministry's worst fear, isn't it? There was a good deal of laughing and appreciative murmuring at this. All in favor of DA? Said Hermione bossily. That's a majority motion passed. She pinned the piece of parchment with all of their signatures on it onto the wall and wrote across the top in large letters. Dumbledore's army. As the group divided into pairs to practice the Expelliarmus charm, Fox quietly repeated everything that had happened to the other shinobi via his radio. Slug walked around and calmly dodged rogue spells that ricocheted around the room. Harry walked around trying to correct people, and after a long time, the general performance of the group improved. Hey, Harry, Hermione called from the other end of the room, have you checked the time? He looked down at his watch and was shocked to see it was already 8:30, which meant they needed to get back to their common rooms immediately or risk being caught and punished by Filch for being out of bounds. He blew his whistle. Everybody stopped shouting Expelliarmus and the last couple of wands clattered to the floor. Well, that was pretty good, said Harry, but we've overrun, we'd better leave it here. Same time, same place next week. Sooner. Said Dean Thomas eagerly and many people nodded in agreement. Angelina, however, said quickly, the Quidditch season's about to start, we need team practices too. Let's say next Wednesday night, then, said Harry, we can decide on additional meetings then. Come on, we'd better get going. He let the group leave in twos and threes, and finally, it was just the five of them. That was really, really good, Harry, said Hermione. Yeah, it was. Said Ron enthusiastically, as they slipped out of the door and watched it melt back into stone behind them. Did you see me disarm Hermione, Harry? Only once, said Hermione, stung. I got you loads more than you got me. Fox bade goodnight to Slug and entered the Gryffindor common room after the trio, and Slug went back to the Ravenclaws. Dragon and Cat were scouting the Forbidden Forest, checking for dangers and whatnot. The weapons mistress kept a sharp eye on every moving thing, be it an ant or a wolf. It was about noon, though it was as dark as night. Dragon Cat said, frowning. She was peering ahead of her in the gloom. The two Kunoichi were very deep into the forest and they had reached the part where even the sunlight could not make its way through the thick canopy. The two of them, even with their trained senses, could only see the dim outline of their hand when they held it up to their face. What is it? Dragon asked. It was oddly silent and Dragon started to wonder how big the forest really was. She and Cat ghosted quietly over the dry leaves on the ground, eyes flickering upwards when something rustled above. Nothing moved and the air seemed to be pressing to their skin like fog. Half human and half horse, Cat reported. She squinted, trying to see through the darkness. They appear to have sensed us and they're coming this way. They don't look happy. Centaurs, Dragon said. Dumbledore told me about them. We shouldn't try to assert our authority. They will not listen because according to them, they are not bound by any human laws. Their ears pricked as they heard the sound of crunching leaves, which steadily grew louder. Dragon felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise as she felt a burning gaze at her back. Humans, a deep baritone voice hissed. What are humans doing so deep in the forest? Are they humans? Another voice asked. They do not look like any humans we have ever seen. They have the faces of a cat and an unknown creature. Perhaps it is that of a dragon, the dragon that resides in the east. Certainly not those of the west. Humans. A voice said forcefully. A centaur stepped out of the covers of the trees and confronted the two guards with acidic eyes. He was a huge palomino with a gray, swishing tail which was joined to the torso of a man. Dragon and Cat kept their movements to a minimal and looked directly into the centaur's eyes, though they knew that some animals considered it as a challenge. But these centaurs were not mere animals, and so the Kunoichi deemed that it was alright to do so. What are you doing in our forest? The centaur asked. We were scouting around, Dragon answered carefully, to see if there was anything dangerous in here. Scouting, you say? The centaur asked dolefully. His fellows shifted uneasily, tossing their heads and baring their teeth, in the forest. Yes, Cat said. Dumbledore has told us of them, another centaur said. He had hired some type of guards for that school of his. Could they be part of that team? "It would appear so," said the gray-tailed centaur. He eyed them sourly, analyzing them with a gaze full of bitterness and anger. "But by our laws, any human that passes through our territory must die." "Are you sure they're not fools, Ronan?" asked a bearded centaur. Ronan frowned and peered at them closely. "Remove those masks of yours," Ronan commanded. Dragon and Cat glanced at each other. "We can't," Dragon said. "You are not our leader. We will not do as you say." The other centaurs snorted in anger, shaking their fists at them. "Just kill them now," shouted one of them. "I fear that if you wish to harm us, then we will have to retaliate by fighting back," Cat said. "This is a warning." "Ha! The human girl is warning us," jeered a centaur. "They must be mocking us. Kill them." The one called Ronan sighed woefully and said, "Very well, very well." The mass of centaurs surged forward, intent on trampling them to death. Others drew their bows and arrows, pointing the tips at the Kunoichi. Dragon caught Cat's eyes and gave her a tiny nod. "Let's do this," Dragon thought, grinning. She had not used her beloved weapons for a while and they were starting to feel neglected. It was over in a few seconds, though in the few seconds the two guards managed to receive a few injuries. They did not seriously hurt any of the centaurs. Only injured them enough to scare them away. Dragon had released a few weapons from her scroll and Cat had gentle-fisted some of them. The gentle fist did not really work against the centaurs as they had no chakra, but it succeeded in winding a few of them for a couple of minutes. "Let's go," Cat murmured. Dragon nodded, giving the centaurs one last glance before darting away. They left a few of the half-human half-horses on the ground, clutching their bleeding wounds, and the others then proceeded to chase down the guards. "They don't give up easily, do they?" Dragon muttered. Cat switched on her Byakugan and titled her head slightly so she could shift her blind spot. "Still coming at us," Cat said, "how annoying." "Much too proud," Dragon sighed. "Anyway, I see the castle. I don't think the centaurs will come out into the open." Dragon and Cat ran out into the glaring sunshine and looked behind them. Sure enough, they could see the centaurs' eyes gleaming from behind the trees, but they came out no further. The centaurs gave the guards dirty looks of disgust before retreating back into the deeper shadows once again. Dragon heaved a sigh of relief. "Report time," she said coolly. Cat nodded. "Report time," she agreed. Chapter 8. Mayhem at the Quidditch pitch. Hermione, being the intelligent witch that she was, had soon devised a clever way of communicating the time and date of the next DA meeting to all the members in case they needed to change it at short notice because it would look suspicious if people from different houses were seen crossing the Great Hall to talk to each other too often. She gave each of the members a fake galleon and explained what would happen to them if Harry changed the meeting dates. As everyone surged forward to get one, Harry drew Hermione off to the side. "You know what these remind me of?" Harry asked. "No, what's that?" "The Death Eater's scars. Voldemort touches one of them and all their scars burn and they know they've got to join him." "Well yes," said Hermione quietly. "That is where I got the idea, but you'll notice I decided to engrave the date on bits of metal rather than on our members' skin." "Yeah, I prefer your way," said Harry, grinning. He gave the two guards, Hawk and Dragon, a fleeting look, then suddenly noticed a strange black swirly tattoo on the two shinobi's shoulders. "What's that?" Harry asked, pointing to the tattoos. Dragon glanced at Hawk, who gave her a tiny nod. "The ANBU insignia," Dragon said. Though her voice was blank, Harry could hear the hint of pride in her voice. "When you become a member of ANBU, you get a tattoo like this on your shoulder. The tattoo is on the left shoulder for the males and on the right shoulder for the females." "What does ANBU mean?" Hermione asked. Her eyes were sparkling with the fact that she could expand her knowledge of the ninja world. Dragon hesitated. "Special Assassination and Tactical Squad," Hawk said smoothly. "Oh." October extinguished itself in a rush of howling winds and driving rain, and November arrived, cold as frozen iron, with hard frosts every morning and icy drafts that bit at exposed hands and faces. The Quidditch match was drawing nearer and nearer. The ninja had been at Hogwarts for about 3 months now. On the morning of the match, it dawned bright and cold. Wilf stretched from his place on an armchair and sleepily stroked Akamaru's head. The huge white dog whined and padded over to sleep by the dying fire. At breakfast that morning, Wilf entered the Great Hall and saw, to none of his concern, Harry and Ron, with the latter looking a repulsive shade of green. Is Weasley-san alright?" asked a voice by his side. He turned and saw Dove, and the blonde was looking anxiously over to the retreat. "No idea," Wilf shrugged. "He looks kinda sick." "Just nerves," Stag drawled, having just entered as well. "Why have the Slytherins got Weasley as our king etched onto badges?" Cat whispered. The Hyuga girl was staring at the silver crowns the Slytherins had pinned to their front. "They have lyrics to go along with it," Raccoon answered, getting up from the Hufflepuff table and joining them. "Hawk and I heard them making it up in the Slytherin common room. It was quite annoying." "Lowering his self-esteem?" Cat said. Raccoon confirmed it. That's an unpleasant but very good tactic. As the time of the game drew near, the guards decided to go to the Quidditch pitch, as did the rest of the Gryffindor team. Wolf stayed in the changing rooms, and he could clearly hear hundreds of footsteps mounting the banked benches of the spectators' stands. Some people were singing, but Wolf did not bother to make out the words. Beside him, Akamara was alert as well, as only an in-dog could. "It's time," said Angelina in a hushed voice, looking at her watch. "Come on everyone, good luck." The team rose, shouldered their brooms and marched in a single file out of the changing room and into the dazzling sunlight. Wolf thought they were far too serious about something as simple as a game. After all, it was only a few balls flying in the air, right? Wolf positioned himself at one end of the pitch and he saw Cat, Dragon and Raccoon stationed on other areas of the pitch as well. The rest of the guards were either at the castle guarding it or in the spectators' stands. As the captains shook hands, Wolf could see that Montague was trying to crush Angelina's fingers, though she did not make a sound. His respect for her moved up a notch. "Mount your brooms," Madame Hooch ordered. She placed her whistle to her mouth and blew. The balls were released and the 14 players shot upwards. Wolf paced the pitch, not paying attention to the game. He heard loud groans from the crowd as Ron missed ball after ball after ball. He tried not to pull his hair out when he heard the irritating lyrics that the Slytherins had thought up. Finally, though, after about 20 minutes, there was a great roar of sound from the Gryffindor end, signaling that Harry had caught the snitch. Wolf's eyes flickered upwards as he saw Harry fall through the air, but he didn't move, knowing that Raccoon would catch him with his sand. He was not disappointed, and Harry was lowered to the ground, nodded his thanks to Raccoon, and was immediately surrounded by his cheering team. Malfoy landed not too far away from Wolf, his grey eyes filled with hate and bitterness at the loss. "Saved Weasley's neck, haven't you?" he said to Harry. "I've never seen a worse keeper, but then he was born in a bin. Did you like my lyrics, Potter?" Wolf saw that Harry did not allow the words to affect him, which Wolf approved of. "We wanted to write another couple of verses," Malfoy called, as Katie and Alicia hugged Harry. "But we couldn't find rhymes for fat and ugly. We wanted to sing about his mother, see?" "Talk about sour grapes," said Angelina, casting Malfoy a disgusted look. Wolf frowned, not liking the fact that Malfoy had the nerve to insult someone's family. Family was important and not something to mock whenever one felt like it. "We couldn't fit in useless loser either for his father, you know." Fred and George had realized what Malfoy was talking about. Halfway through shaking Harry's hand, they stiffened, looking round at Malfoy. Cat, Dragon and Raccoon flitted towards the commotion, seeing the tension between the twins and Malfoy. Malfoy continued to say things about the Weasley family, and finally, after insulting Harry's mother, Harry, Fred and George all lost control and sprinted towards Malfoy, intent on pounding the blonde into oblivion. In a flash, the three boys were in headlocks performed by Cat, Wolf and Raccoon. Dragon strode over to Malfoy and grabbed the Slytherin boy by the front of his robes. Harry plunged his hand into his pocket and drew out his wand. He pointed it at Malfoy and yelled out a croaked reducto. Cat grabbed at his wand, but the spell had already been shot. Fortunately, Dragon had sensed the spell coming and had pushed Malfoy off to the side. No one was hit. "You?" Dragon said without a hint of emotion in her voice. It somehow made her sound scarier. She pointed a gloved finger at Malfoy, who stood up shakily. "Never ever bring up a dead person like that again." Dragon left a shell-shocked Malfoy frozen to the ground after making sure that he felt her killer intent. Once Wolf was sure George wasn't going to pummel Malfoy into bloody little pieces, he cautiously let go. The boy started to charge at Malfoy again, but before Wolf could catch him, Madame Hooch intervened. After getting scolded by Madame Hooch, Harry and the twins were sent to Professor McGonagall's office, all of them fuming and shaking with anger. Fox and Wolf followed the three, both of them emitting an aura of quiet annoyance. McGonagall had shouted at them before Umbridge interrupted, claiming that she had the power to give any student any punishment she desired. Unfortunately, it was true. Harry, Fred and George were given a lifelong Quidditch ban. In the common room, it did not feel as though Gryffindor had won the match at all. Everywhere there were disconsolate and angry faces. The team themselves were slumped around the fire, all apart from Ron, who had not been seen since the end of the match. No one talked much, and even the ninja seemed to maintain an uneasy silence, though they were tense about other things. "Zetsu has been sighted in Hogsmeade," Fox murmured. "Crap, what are we going to do?" "Not lose our cool, that's the first thing," Stag said. "Where was he sighted?" "Near the Shrieking Shack," Wolf said. "That's pretty close to the school." "We can't let him get any nearer," Fox said. "He's too dangerous and there are too many kids in the way here." "Sasori and Madara are still in the ninja dimension, correct?" Stag said. Fox nodded. "Yeah, Tsunade Bochan said she's tracking their movements," Wolf said. "But we still have to worry about Kisum, Itachi, Dadara and Zetsu," Fox said. "Yeah." Hagrid retuned that night, and the trio had sprinted down to see him, followed by a disapproving Fox. "This is the only time I'll make an exception," Fox had told them. "Next time, when it is past curfew, you stay in the Gryffindor common room." Hagrid had been very interested to meet the ninja, as he had heard a lot about them. There was an odd look in his eye as he talked about his next lesson. Hermione had tried to persuade him to not show them any dangerous animals, though Hagrid's definition of dangerous and Hermione's were very far apart. During self-defense class that week, the ninja had commented that they were impressed by the way the Hogwarts students had improved their general fitness level. They had learned how to punch and were now being taught how to block. "Stay balanced," Hawk told them. "Loosen yourself, one." They were in pairs again, and this time they had to be partnered with someone from a different house. Harry ended up with Ernie Macmillan, though Harry did not exactly feel like punching the pompous Hufflepuff boy. "Potter-san, just hit him," Stag called out lazily. He stopped to observe the progress the pair was making. "You can't hesitate when you're facing an enemy, or they'll kill you first." Harry gritted his teeth, scrunched up his fist and aimed straight for Ernie's face. He winced when it connected. "Go to Sluggard Dove and get clean up," Stag told Ernie, who had clapped his hand over his face. Blood leaked out, and Harry was sure he had given Ernie a broken nose. Stag turned to Harry. "At least you know how to punch," Stag said dryly. He moved off to inspect Hermione and Hannah Abbott. Ron grinned at him, mimicking the punch Harry had just made at Justin Finch-Fletchley. As Harry, Ron and Hermione headed down to Hagrid's cabin on Tuesday, followed by Kat, they discussed in worried tones about what Hagrid might have in store for them. They were also concerned about how Malfoy and the rest of his cronies would behave if Umbridge was watching them, as she had told them that she would be inspecting Hagrid's class that day. However, the High Inquisitor was nowhere to be seen as they struggled through the snow towards Hagrid, who stood waiting for them on the edge of the forest. He did not present a reassuring sight. There was a half-dead cow carried on his massive shoulders. "We're working in here today." Hagrid called happily to the approaching students, jerking his head back at the dark tress behind him. "Bit more sheltered. Anyway, they prefer the dark." "What prefers the dark?" Kat heard Malfoy say sharply to Crabbe and Goyle, a trace of panic in his voice. "What did you say prefers the dark, did you hear?" Kat had a tiny prickling of unease in the back of her mind, and she scanned the trees of the Forbidden Forest with careful eyes. "Ready?" said Hagrid cheerfully, looking around at the class. "Right, well, I've been saving a trip into the forest for year 5th year. Thought we'd go in and see these creatures in their natural habitat. Now, what we're studying today is pretty rare. I reckon I'm probably the only person in Britain who's managed to train them." "And you're sure they're trained, are you?" said Malfoy, the panic in his voice even more pronounced. Before he could say anything stupid, Kat had flickered behind him and given the back of his head a sharp rap. The Gryffindors snickered, and Hagrid flashed the blue-haired girl a warm smile. She stared blankly back but inclined her head very slightly. Hagrid turned and strode into the forest. Nobody seemed much disposed to follow until Harry took the lead. They walked for about 10 minutes until they reached a place where the trees stood so closely together that it was as dark as twilight and there was no snow at all on the ground. With a grunt, Hagrid deposited his half-dead cow on the ground, stepped back and turned to face his class, most of whom were creeping from tree to tree towards him, peering around nervously. Gather round," Hagrid encouraged. "Now, they'll be attracted by the smell o' meat, but I'm going ter give 'em a call anyway, cause they'll like ter know it's me." He turned, shook his shaggy head to get the hair out of his face, and gave an off-shrieking cry that echoed through the dark trees like the call of some monstrous bird. Pat, though she didn't show it, was spooked. It reminded her forcefully of a certain forest back in Konoha. When she had taken her the first Chunin exam with Kiba and Shino in the Forest of Death, there were the same creepy cries and yowls from various monsters animals. Though she was now in ANBU, those memories still gave her the chills, having frightened her back when she was a timid little genin who stuttered. Pat noticed a pair of blank white shining eyes that were growing larger through the gloom, and a moment later the dragonish face, neck and then skeletal body of a great black-winged horse emerged from the darkness. It surveyed the class for a few seconds, swishing its long black tail, then bowed its head and began to tear flesh from the dead cow with its pointed fangs. Pat had instructively grabbed the hilt of a kunai, but she restrained herself from throwing it. Evidently, it was part of the lesson, because Hagrid had also seen them, and he did not look worried. "Oh, and here comes another one," said Hagrid proudly, as a second black-winged horse appeared out of the dark trees, folded its leathery wings closer to its body, and dipped its head to gorge the meat. "Now put your hands up, who can see him?" Harry raised his hand, as did a Slytherin boy and Neville. Hagrid glanced at Kat. "I guess you can see him too," Hagrid said. Kat nodded. "Yeah, being ninja and all." "Excuse me," said Malfoy in a sneering voice, "but what exactly are we supposed to be seeing?" For an answer, Hagrid pointed to the cow carcass on the ground. The whole class stared at it for a few seconds, the several people gasped and Parvati squealed. After all, bit of flesh stripping themselves away from the bones and vanishing into thin air had to look very odd indeed. Thestrals, Hagrid said proudly. Hogwarts has got a whole herd of 'em here. Now, who knows? But they're really, really unlucky, interrupted Parvati, looking alarmed. No, 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 said Hagrid, chuckling, tha's just a superstition, that is, they ren unlucky, they're dead clever and useful. Now, who can tell me why some Oya can see 'em and some can't? Hermione raised her hand. The only people who can see Thestrals, she said, are people who have seen death. Tha's exactly right, said Hagrid solemnly. People who have seen death, Cat thought. Then who has Hagrid sent see die? Cat detected a presence behind her and she whipped around, peering into the gloom carefully. A short, stout person was crunching through the forest, making a hell of a lot of noise. Cat finally confirmed that the person was Umbridge. Wonderful. Hem. There came the irritating and damn annoying cough. Umbridge had arrived. She was standing a few meters away from Cat, though she shifted slightly when she saw the guard. She was wearing a green hat and cloak, her clipboard at the ready. Oh no, Cat thought. She's going to ruin Hagrid's confidence. Cat had taken a great liking to the giant teacher and she spent the rest of the lesson trying to restrain herself from stabbing Umbridge in the back as the toad-like teacher criticized everything that Hagrid did. December arrived, bringing with it more snow. Along with the snow, it meant more work for the ninja because all the Hogwarts students seemed to be in a holiday spirit and they were prone to misbehave. Also adding to the stress list was the fact that the Akatsuki still hadn't made a move yet. I don't understand, Fox said in a frustrated whisper. Are they trying to make us die of anxiety? Maybe that's their plan, Raccoon muttered. That, or make Fox annoy us to death because of the anxiety. Fox gave him a half-hearted punch. Fox, Dumbledore-san knows about the Akatsuki, right? Slug asked. Of course, Fox said. Does he know why? Raccoon asked quietly. Fox opened his mouth and then closed it again. No, Fox mumbled. He asked, but I didn't really give him a straight answer. Fox, Slug said gently. Fox sighed. It's hard to tell, alright. Fox said, casting his eyes downwards. It's not like I'm proud of it. I don't like what I am. Of course you're not, Raccoon said. But still, he's our client. And the Kyuubi isn't you, Fox. You're you and the Kyuubi is the Kyuubi. Two separate things. This earned him a small smile from Fox. I'll tell him later, Fox said, hoping that his friends would drop the subject. Alright, Slug said. Both she and Raccoon knew he was procrastinating, but they didn't want to force him to do it either. Meanwhile, it was decided that Harry would be spending Christmas at the Burrow. Fox was planning to get half the guards to follow Harry and the other half stay at Hogwarts, but Dumbledore had insisted, with the usual twinkle in his eye, for the shinobi to all spend Christmas together, as it was a season of merrymaking and togetherness, and all that joy. We have a job to do, Fox had said. We do not celebrate Christmas, so we will continue guarding. But haven't you ever heard the phrase? When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Dumbledore had asked, smiling. Fox shook his head. Well, it means when you're in another country, you should respect their customs. Yes, but we're not here for a holiday, Fox had argued. This is a mission. I assure you, there won't be many people staying at Hogwarts, Dumbledore had said, less than 20 students, in fact. The staff members are more than capable of taking care of them. Fox and Dumbledore had disputed over the topic, the latter rather cheerfully, for a few days before Fox finally admitted defeat. The Burrow might be a crowded place, though, Dove said. I have seen it in Weasley-san's mind. It's quite small. It doesn't matter. We can even sleep outside if we must, Fox shrugged. It won't really bother any of us. Yeah, sleep outside in the snow, Dove said. That'll be quite warm, won't it? It had taken Fox a few minutes to realize that she was being sarcastic. Stag had sighed and mumbled his usual troublesome, but on the inside, he was regretful that he was missing some of the most important months of his daughter's life. This December, Michiko would be 4 months old. He wondered how Tamari was going. She had said that she was well in their last letter, but ink on paper did not mean much to him. Well, there wasn't much he could do about it now. Slug went to the last DA meeting for the term before the Christmas holidays. She raised her eyebrows as she entered the room of requirement and saw that it was decorated with banners bearing the words "Have a very Harry Christmas." She watched as Harry took down the banners and glanced around when Luna Lovegood entered the room. "Hello," Luna said vaguely. Unlike the other students, Luna did not seem to be intimidated by the ninjas' cold remarks or their blank masks. She treated them like any other student. Angelina, Katie and Alicia all arrived at the same time, all of whom were looking breathless and cold. It seemed that they had come from Quidditch practice. "Well," said Angelina dully, pulling off her cloak and throwing it in a corner, "we've finally replaced you." "Replaced me?" said Harry blankly. "You and Fred and George," she said impatiently. "We've got another seeker." "Boo," said Harry quickly. "Ginny Weasley," said Katie. Harry gaped at her. Slug was not surprised. She had seen the Weasley girl flying around quite a few times. "Yeah, I know," said Angelina. "But she's actually pretty good." "Nothing on you, of course," she said, throwing Harry a very dirty look, "but as we can't have you." Slug watched Harry's face work as he tried to restrain himself from retorting. "And what about the Peters?" Harry asked, in a very strained voice. "Andrew Kirk," said Alicia without enthusiasm, "and Jack Sloper. Neither of them are brilliant, but compared to the rest of the idiots who turned up." The arrival of Ron, Hermione and Neville brought this depressing discussion to an end, and within 5 minutes the room was full. Slug watched as Harry called the group to order and explained that they would just be going over some spells today, as there was no point in starting anything new with a 3-week-long holiday ahead of them. Despite herself, Slug was impressed with his leadership skills and how well he managed to get everyone to listen to him. They practiced the impediment jinx and then started on stunning again. At the end of the hour, Harry called a halt. "You're getting really good," he said, beaming around at them like a proud teacher. "When we get back from the holidays we can start doing some of the big stuff, maybe even patronuses." "What are patronuses?" Slug wondered. There was a murmur of excitement. The room began to clear in the usual 2s and 3s. Most people wished Harry a happy Christmas as they went. Slug quietly reported everything to Fox via her radio when she noticed Cho Chang hanging back. Knowing that the two wanted some alone time, Slug flashed Harry a hidden smirk and slipped out from the room, waiting by the door outside. Harry emerged from the room with a thoroughly lost expression on his face. Slug tried not to laugh but contented herself by grinning. She knew it was unbecoming of an ANBU to show emotions like this, but the look on Harry's face was very amusing. "Are you alright?" Slug asked. She was pleased to note that her voice remained blank, as usual. Harry opened his mouth to speak but then closed it again. He nodded. "Why yeah," he said in a half-strangled voice. Of course, Slug knew exactly what went on inside the room. "First time?" Slug asked. She felt the heat emitting from Harry's face. "Yeah," Harry said quietly. The two of them said no more until Harry entered the common room. Slug left him and went over to Fox, who was busy writing the next mission report. "Otterson has just had his first kiss," Slug whispered. She nodded to Wolf and Stag and with one more glance towards Harry, she left the room. Fox turned around to see Ron burst out laughing and an embarrassed expression on Harry's face. "First kiss?" Fox asked briskly. Harry turned scarlet. "What's there to be shy about?" "Fox, leave the kid alone," Stag said, stretching. "Stop teasing him." "Fox isn't doing anything wrong," Wolf said. The ones who knew him well enough could hear the grin in his voice. To others, he sounded emotionless. Harry, Ron and Hermione talked amongst themselves, which mainly consisted of Ron laughing, Harry staying silent and Hermione giving the boys inside information on girls. Harry dreamed he was back in the D-Arum. Cho was accusing him of luring her there under false pretenses. She said he had promised her 150 chocolate frog cards if she showed up. Harry protested. The dream was warped and crazy. Cho turned into Hermione and then Hermione turned into Dragon and Harry was saying all kinds of strange things. It changed. His body felt smooth, powerful and flexible. He was gliding between shining metal bars, across dark, cold stone he was flat against the floor, sliding along on his belly it was dark, yet he could see objects around him shimmering in strange vibrant colors he was turning his head at first glance the corridor was empty, but no man was sitting on the floor ahead, his chin drooping onto his chest, his outline gleaming in the dark. Harry put out his tongue he tasted the man's scent on the air he was alive but drowsy sitting in front of a door at the end of the corridor. Harry longed to bite the man, but he must master the impulse he had more important work to do. But the man was stirring a silver cloak fell from his legs as he jumped to his feet. And Harry saw his vibrant blurred outline towering above him, saw a wand withdrawn from a belt he had no choice, he reared high from the floor and struck once, twice, 3 times, plunging his fangs deeply into the man's flesh, feeling his ribs splinter beneath his jaws, feeling the warm gush of blood. The man was yelling in pain then he fell silent, he slumped backwards against the wall blood was splattering the floor. His forehead hurt terribly it was aching fit to burst. Otterson. Pottersan. What if ANBU Naruto x Hermione and Harry Potter end here and thanks for watching my video till the end.